We'll call this meeting to order. This is the April meeting of the Bloomington Transportation Commission. Can we please have a call of the roll? Okay, now.
All right, Kopic?
Still here.
Thank you. Connell? Binder? Here. Volin?
Volan, that's here. I'm here.
Drummy? Flaherty?
Here.
Davis?
Here.
Skudishko? She's out. And then Strasburg.
Strasburg, here. Okay, looks like we have a quorum in chambers. Here is a brief review of our agenda for this regular hearing. We'll hear reports and communications from commissioners and from staff, including an administrative update, an update on 180-day orders, an update on the ADA transportation plan, an update on the parking studies status, and an update on the North Walnut Street project. We'll then hear cases, including TCP 2610, a corridor study for Indiana Avenue, Smith to 10th. Scroll further down here. Also TCR 2611, Title 15 amendments, including the subdivision Atlas on 17th. And then we'll have discussion, staff proposals, general public comment, et cetera, and we'll adjourn. Discussion that would be of topics that are not already on the docket. Let us start now with, we have no minutes for approval prepared this month, so let's go straight to reports from commissioners. Is there a commissioner who has a report? To my left? To my right? Online? Okay, commissioners shouldn't be shy to weigh in. Just briefly want to say that, I want to say thanks to Jackie Scanlon in the Planning and Transportation Department for repairing the Parking Commission page. Even though the commission is defunct, there's still relevant materials on it, and it had some missing links. And between Jackie Scanlon and Iris Bull, they got it fixed this afternoon, and I just want to say I'm appreciative of it. Okay, with that, we go now to reports and communication, or communications from staff. Let's start with an administrative update. Iris Bull.
Thank you. The administrative update has three components. The first is just to report on a change that everybody voted on, TCR 2609, where we updated the commission calendar to reflect that there will be no scheduled regular hearing for August at this time. And as a general reminder related to the calendar, there are two different places on the commission's website where the calendar is accessible, and I've shared detailed instructions in the staff memo on how you can add that calendar to your own Google Drive account so that it's a little easier to access. But you can also see upcoming meeting dates on our main page on the sidebar on the right-hand side. And if you have any questions related to accessing commission documents and the like, please feel free to email the commission at transportation.commission@bloomington.in.gov. A more substantive update is on changes that are occurring at the city level with respect to document accessibility. Over the last 6 months, staff in the City of Bloomington ITS department have guided and implemented a variety of updates to administrative policies, applications, and procedures across the city. These updates have been necessary to ensure the city's resources will be compliant with federal requirements around the Americans with Disabilities Act, which were scheduled to take effect April 24th, 2026, for government agencies serving 50,000 or more persons. These guidelines require that all city-maintained documents created or utilized as part of regular business meet WCAG 2.1 Level AA technical standards when those resources are shared or accessible through websites and mobile apps. Given the scale of operations affected by these guidelines and in anticipation of the inevitable update to this standard, ITS staff adopted WCAG 2.2 standards as a compliance baseline. And typically, staff would not report on the status of an administrative project like this because complying with federal standards is simply a part of routine business. In theory, we're not talking about something new. This legal requirement has sort of been in development since 2010. In practice, however, I've observed a wide range of reactions and experiences to the change in standards this year, and improving the accessibility of documents and resources necessary for full participation in civic society is an undeniably positive feature of the compliance standards. At this time, the training and technical literacy required to consistently and reliably meet the standard has meant, in many cases, a radical change to the way staff complete their work on a day-to-day basis. The scale and nature of some of the implemented changes will impact residents and commissioners. Some may observe that in the coming year, for example, city staff may become reluctant to share or send PDFs via email. Boards and commissions liaisons will no longer distribute meeting materials via a sort of mega PDF, and public records requests will no longer disperse PDF documents to the public by default. Some of these changes may be subject to revision, while others may not. PDFs in particular create significant barriers to WCAG 2.1 and 2.2 compliance standards. In order to make continued progress on the improvement of city policies and procedures, those of us who serve as digital document stewards for the city will need to become more adept at navigating and explaining the common knowledge gap that exists around screen reader accessible document creation and management. Up until April 17th, 2026, staff were operating under the assumption that all packet materials for this meeting needed to meet the minimum compliance standards set out by WCAG 2.2. But later in the day, on the 17th, an announcement from the Justice Department signaled reconsideration of their implementation deadline. They pushed out the compliance deadline for 1 year. So practically speaking, this has alleviated some of the immediate urgency with which staff were moving to implement all planned policy and procedural changes related to achieving compliance. However, it hasn't changed the direction staff intend to go with respect to document preparation and management for the Transportation Commission. Inevitably, staff must abandon the preferred established practice of assembling all documents into a single PDF document for public review, as there's simply no feasible way to do this in a way that meets WCAG 2.1 or 2.2 standards. As staff works towards standardizing an alternative document linking system, we welcome commissioners and public feedback on how to improve the process. And then finally, there is a section in here, conflict of interest disclosure forms. The Deputy Clerk of Communications and Outreach, Jennifer Crossley, has requested all staff liaisons to direct all boards and commissions members to fill out the 2026 Conflict of Interest Questionnaire form online, with the expectation that members will complete this task by the next scheduled meeting. In this case, commissioners will have until May 18th to complete the form. The City of Bloomington Legal Department will be reviewing form submissions to determine if appointees need to complete another state-mandated form. And if you have any questions about the questionnaire, you can direct them to Crossley directly, and I've provided her contact information. And I'll take any comments or questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Are there any comments or questions from members about administrative schedules, document accessibility changes, or conflict of interest disclosure forms? On my left? On my right? Online? I can't see Ms. Davis to see whether or not she's got her hand raised. Okay. I do have one question about the document accessibility forms. So if PDFs aren't compliant, what kind of documents are compliant? Are Word documents or text files? What's compliant?
That's a great question. Technically speaking, compliance is something that's achieved by, in terms of how the document is prepared dictates whether or not it's compliant. So the format itself won't determine compliance. It's how well the resources utilized with a specific application will make it compliant. So yes, Word documents can be compliant, but Word documents can also not be compliant if you don't use all of the features in them appropriately. So for example, a very common practice is to make a bullet list in a Word document by just hitting the line on the keyboard and then hitting tab and then manually typing it in. And instead, you should be using the list function built into the program. What's happening on the behind the scenes is that you're creating metadata that a screen reader can actually pick up on and utilize to direct the experience appropriately for someone who's using a screen reader. Without that, documents just become walls of overwhelming text and noise that are generally not considered compliant.
So if a member of the public sends the commission a handwritten letter, does someone have to type it in for it to become accessible? It can't simply be scanned and attached as part of an
That's a great
exhibit.
question. So when the time comes, there will be a provision sort of carved out for third-party documents. That may be something that the commission liaisons don't need to do anything for. It's sort of an open question. At what point do we need to remediate documents presented to staff? My hope and assumption is that so long as folks are sending us digital documents, it is a trivial exercise to make them screen reader accessible and to preserve them that way. If they provide us with something handwritten, that's actually harder, because when we scan them, they are scanned and sent to us as PDFs from the copier. That's just yeah.
Is it also safe to assume that any petitions coming before us are already screen readable, like they're already being prepared in this format?
Yeah, that
The
has
cases?
been, yeah, all of the case documents that we've prepared. That said, because of the deadline extension, and for my own sanity, I didn't push myself too hard this month, especially.
Oh, I don't mean this
given-
month, I just meant in general.
Oh, just,
Yeah.
in general, in theory, staff liaisons should not be accepting any documents from staff that are not already compliant. It is not the liaison's responsibility to create a compliant document.
I believe that's the equivalent of shots fired there, Mr. Seaborn. We just thought you should note that. All right, thank you very much
Yeah.
for those answers. And I look forward to seeing I guess we're not going to have packets anymore.
We won't have packets, and genuinely, I had hoped to perhaps be able to prepare something in advance for commissioners, but I have too many limitations on my time. It wasn't something I could.
But it is safe to assume that every document linked to in an agenda is being preserved in a separate place on the city file server.
Yeah, so part of the process here involved ITS creating a special shared Google Drive where it is sharing management permissions for all boards and commissions. So for Transportation Commission, we were already sort of doing this on the back end in terms of document preparation and management.
Yeah.
So for us, it looks a little more like just copying and pasting and moving things over when they're ready. For other boards and commissions, this is a much more significant update. They weren't doing anything close to what we were doing.
Okay, well, thank you for staying on top of the technological curve for us. Let's move on now to 180-day order update. Andrew Seaborn, Director of Engineering. Hello.
Hi, good evening. Just providing my monthly update on 180-day orders. Since our last meeting, 4 orders have been extended. No new orders have been issued. Pending one discussion topic on your agenda later today about the Atlas on 17th subdivision. There may be another 180 new one issued in the coming month. There is a similar one to that related to a relatively new subdivision close to Summit Elementary that may also be issued between now and your next meeting, but just giving you a preview of what might be coming. But right now, these are just reissuance of prior orders, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about them.
Any questions for staff on 180-day orders? To my right, Mr. Flaherty.
Thanks. Just my ongoing structural question about whether or not there is clarity in the administration, specifically the legal department, about how to handle 180-day orders. So you sent out an email update recently, and I think it was a bunch of renewals. So we're sort of, as we fail to resolve this question, the sort of number of 180-day orders grows. We keep renewing more and more. That's clearly not, the intent for how they're supposed to be used. So any updates on timelines, how to resolve?
Fair question. I don't have any significant new information to share from your question last month. I guess an honest question, maybe we can connect offline, is I understand council has a attorney at least on call, or that I think the next step in my mind was having council's attorney and administration legal team work together on this topic. And for my sake, I would love for that to happen. So
Yeah, that occurred to me too. So I guess, is it still the position of Corporation Counsel that the things that are covered by 180-day orders are not the council's purview at all?
that is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Questions to my left for Mr. Seaboard? Online, Ms. Davis. Okay. The only question I have is, in the agenda, the several items that are listed under 100-day orders, so these are all existing ones that just happen to be being linked to. They're not actually on the agenda. Is that, in other words, if they're on the agenda, are we supposed to hear about them, or did we already hear about them?
The ones that I renewed, you've already heard about. I'm happy to give a summary of them again, but they are just the memo and then just copies of the extended orders for your reference.
Well, I'm just thinking that for the sake of clarity, that in the future, perhaps items that have already been presented to the commission just don't get listed here because they're already in the staff memo. You linked to them in the staff memo, and that way we don't have to worry about voting on each one.
That is a reasonable suggestion. I believe that in this version of the template, so to speak, for the agenda, this is sort of like standard practice for just listing all possible like attachments with a specific item, but I recognize that the agenda starts looking really long.
It's not even
this
that,
way.
it's that if it's on the agenda, we have to do something about it. And now, granted, this is just an update, but it might, in the future, if you take those 4 items and you just link them in the staff memo, only the new ones should be the ones that we become, unless there's something here that we're supposed to vote on, that it's coming back for
I
a
see.
second hearing. See what I mean?
I see what you're saying, something we can consider going
Okay.
forward, and just also a general note about things that would be in this part of the agenda are just reports and not things I would expect the commission to have to take action on.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on now to the ADA Transportation Plan. I believe this is Mr. Shermis.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michael Shermis, and I'm the liaison for the Council for Community Accessibility and the Bloomington Monroe County Human Rights Commission. Every 2 years, we do an ADA transition plan. For those who don't know, entities of over 50 people need to show how they are making their organization more accessible, accessible in general. And so we agreed, that would be the ADA coordinator, which I also am, and the relevant departments like engineer, planning, parks, public works, that who provide the data for part of this report, that we will do this every 2 years. This is my 3rd version of this. Prior to that, it had been many years before it had been done. Each year we acquire the data from the relevant departments and update that data and let people know as well what we are doing to change attitudes and make more people aware of all of the issues that are out there with lack of accessibility. We've been working on this. It's now considered in a draft form and have been passed out to the Council for Community Accessibility for public review. That just happened this afternoon. So it happened that your commission was the other place where it happens. In the past, it was pedestrian and bike and the traffic commission. So you get that now as also your duty to do public comment. And then we also send a press release out and announce it to the general public for any input and put it at the library and all of that. In an effort to make sure that, yes, we're trying to cover all of the things that are needed to show that we are trying to become more accessible. So this is your opportunity to let me know of any kind of changes or feedback that you have on the plan that got sent out to you earlier. I will tell you there was one error that we caught today. It's kind of ironic that it was caught because we were attempting to ensure that the document itself was accessible. As people may be aware, as Iris said, it takes a lot more staff time to do this. And for a larger document with tables and charts, it becomes even, I don't want to use the word nightmare, but it becomes pretty difficult to be able to get it as accessible as you need. And we made a small error while we were struggling with one of the tables, and apparently along the way grabbed some of the data from an older table that had estimates in it as opposed to the actual figures. So this is a corrected version of that that has the actual figures in it as opposed to a couple of the estimates. And so it's just minor changes, so that's all. But we wanted you to have the very final version of that. With that, I would take any questions if you have any concerns or issues you want to know more about.
Questions for the ADA transition plan? Let's start online. Ms. Davis, you got any?
I do not. I am familiar with it and am very appreciative of it.
Very good. Let's go now to in the room to my right, to my left. I do have one question. I'm looking at the memo. I don't see a link to the plan. It says that it's now available for public review. Is it supposed to be linked to in this memo?
In the memo, wait a minute, I might be confused.
Oh, wait a minute. I saw it's attached.
It's in the
I'm sorry,
next
it's below that.
thing.
Okay, my bad. Here it is. Okay, never mind.
Okay, that was easy.
It's still getting used to not everything being not in one packet. All right. Question, Mr. Flaherty.
Yeah, first, thank you, and just kudos for the third edition that you've worked on of this plan. I enjoyed reviewing it. I appreciate the recent creation of the Snow Buddies program to help folks who may have difficulty clearing their sidewalks in the event of snow to partner with a neighbor or another volunteer to be able to do that. I think that's really terrific. And so first, just a question of how that's going and yeah, just like what our experience is to date. But then second, it reminded me that there's a related accessibility issue with snow that I don't believe was really covered in the plan. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Maybe very briefly in one place. But it was a really, really significant accessibility challenge in the couple of larger snowstorms we had this year, as you're surely aware, and we've experienced similar in the past. The council is hosting a deliberation session in May that we intend to invite some different stakeholders, including Council for Community Accessibility, this commission, others, to join to try to work on that. But does that deserve more, I guess, attention in this report, like that issue and the need to address it and the gaps we face there? So two questions. One, just how's Snow Buddies going? Second, what about snow and accessibility more broadly in its role or place in this plan?
Well, I'll take the tougher question first. As people are probably aware, these snowstorms were pretty significant in the sheer quantity of snow and the issues that came after those. And in that 2, 3, 4 weeks, nothing to say about the Snow Buddies program, we experienced a lot of challenges in dealing with those snow. There was a lot of snow that got shoved into accessible parking spaces because of the fact that it snowed and warm and then froze. There was many places that were just practically impassable that were normally would not have been an issue, but they were hard to be able to break the ice and all that stuff like that. I almost wish that Adam Wason from the Department Director of Public Works was here to be able to respond to that, because he is much more qualified to tell you about all of the challenges that they dealt with. Essentially, if you want for there to be less problems with accessibility in snow, it's probably more about saying we need to dedicate more money to being able to clear and deal with the issues and challenges that large snowfalls like that means is going to happen. It's like that's what we got to do. I'm one of the people on the front line who got to field a lot of those issues, and we tried to address them as quick as we possibly could. And I don't know what else, because it was unusual circumstances, and it's not something here's an accessible problem. It becomes an accessible problem later, but we try as best as we can. And so I direct a lot of that to Public Works. So. The good answer for the question is snow buddies, because of course you'll find that a lot of the complaints that came from around the city were for people who were upset about sidewalks not being done in front of houses. And so you get 3 or 4 that have been done and then 1 that hasn't, and 3 or 4 that are done and 1 hasn't. And the issues of snow plows that come through and shove a lot of the snow right into the accessible curb ramp, which of course gets to be really challenging because a lot of people don't look upon that as their responsibility, because they don't look at it as doing all the snow over to it. Not only do we ask for people to volunteer, for people who are disabled or elderly to come and do snow removal in front of people's houses who can't do it, we've also asked for people to volunteer to do accessible curb ramps around spots near where they live. So if they don't have somebody that's close to them that they're helping, they could do all the curb ramps as much as they can. The Snow Buddies program has 2-3 dozen, well, maybe more, 3, 4, 5 dozen volunteers, and they're all matched with all sorts of people all over. We sometimes have certain neighborhoods that don't have as many volunteers around them. We work as best as we can to try to address that. And staff was out digging stuff ourselves all the time too. So it's a great program though. I'm really happy we got it. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Seaward, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, just to note that this past January, I think after some of the snow, I reached out to the U.S. Access Board, part of the Department of Justice, and specifically the person there that focuses on the transportation and public right-of-way, to inquire just about any guidance or standards that they have as it relates to events like snowstorms. And basically the response I got is that a lot of their guidance deals with more like how things are built, how they're constructed, that they don't have explicit guidance or policies regarding things like snow events and how it impacts the sidewalk system. A specific couple things I might just read here is that the regulations do not, however, prohibit isolated or temporary interruptions in service or access due to maintenance. Snow removal would fall into that category. And so just basically making sure we're not making it more burdensome for people with disabilities, but just to say that I did personally reach out to them just to see if there was specific guidance, and there really isn't any related to snow specifically.
Seems like a gap there too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Further questions from commissioners for Mr. Shermis on the ADA transportation plan? To my left. I do have a question that's also not in the memo. What's the deadline for submitting comments on the plan?
I think it's 3 weeks. It's about 3 weeks. It'll be in the public press release as well. 3 weeks from date. I forgot the exact date. I'm sorry. And by the way, the reason for that timeline to be compressed and get the feedback in about 3 weeks is that we need to turn it around and then get it to the city council, because the city council does actually vote on it, and we're working on this plan. So I just wanted you to know that as well.
So I assume that it's going to be voted on before council recess in June? Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's always a question. We sort of want to wait to get it done before we turn it over to them and say, here it is, get this on your schedule as soon as you can, because we're waiting for that. So that's the only date to be determined.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
move
Appreciate
on
all
to
your
the-
help on this.
Just a reminder to everyone, please comment on the ADA transportation plan before mid-May. Let's move on now to the parking study status update. Who is here to present? Ms. Wall, I see in the audience. Hello.
Hello. My name is Michelle Wall. I'm the Parking Service Director for the City of Bloomington. I'm here today to present the Walker Recommendation Report, and I will just need access to share my screen. me for just a moment. It's not. It's not letting me, Agnes.
That's a cute kitty. Parked there on our screen.
Please, if you don't mind. It's not letting me get to my Microsoft.
Did you have it open?
No.
Okay. Do you want to open it up? You had it on Drive, right?
Perhaps
I have it on Drive, yeah.
we could have another
Thank
report
you.
while we're getting a technical difficulties solved, or?
There we go. Okay.
And you should be able to see it.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, good. All right.
I
Please
apologize.
continue.
So this is the Walker Parking Rate Study and Comprehensive Review, and this is Walker's recommendation. So far, you received the Walker report and the parking study on, I believe it was April 17th, Iris got it sent out, and there was a Google form for all the comments. I actually did not get any comments. So at this point, I'll go ahead with the presentation. Tonight, Transportation Commission is in receipt of the parking rate study and comprehensive review. There's no resolution or action to be taken on any of the specific items from the report this evening. The task completed in 2025 was existing conditions, financial review, stakeholder engagement, peer comparisons, which is benchmarking, organizational and policy evaluation, operations and technology, communication, branding and wayfinding, recommendations, and then the implementation of the action plan. Some of the takeaways of the Walker rate study and review is on-street rates are too low for turnover, which then correlates to the garages being too low, outdated parking technology, inconsistent wayfinding, and need for transparency. Walker broke this up in 4 categories: organization, policy, operations and technology, communication, branding, and wayfinding. Under organizations, they listed 3 recommendations: centralized citation appeals within parking services, establish a clear parking services mission statement, and then data-driven operations with transparent key performance indicators. The next is policy. Their 3 recommendations is implement zone-based on-street parking rates, set rates for high and low areas, then adjust the off-street parking rates to align rates with demand and operation, and lastly, reduce paid parking enforcement hours, limit on-street enforcement times. So here is a table I've listed here of the 10-year rate changes for on-street and surface lots. The core zones, which was highlighted in the actual report, was the high demand area. For the first 3 years, it'd be $1.50, the next 3, $1.75, and so on. The low demand areas, $1.25 for the first 3 years, and so on. The next table to the right in orange is the garage hourly recommendation from Walker and the lost ticket fees. The next slide is about operations to technologies. Walker listed 3 recommendations: transition to a multi-space meter pay station using pay-by-plate for on-street parking, upgrade enforcement to LPR, which is mobile license plate recognition technology, to move to fully digital permits, and lastly, replace existing off-street gate parking equipment. Last category was communication, branding, and wayfinding. Walker suggested to create and recommended to create a recognizable city parking system logo and brand identity. Next is develop and launch an ongoing parking and system communication and marketing campaign. And lastly, to install informational signage at key locations. Next steps, Walker Consultants will be here to present a report and the report findings to City Council. That date is yet to be determined, hopefully in May, maybe June, before they break up for the summer. The next is the input from various stakeholder groups. We'll have focus groups and stakeholder groups, along with administration, will be collected to guide decisions on which rate and policy recommendations should be approved for changes. All these revised recommendations will then, will propose to Title 15 code changes, will then come back and present to the Transportation Commission, and then the final recommendations will then, with the Title 15 code changes, will be presented to City Council for approval. Lastly, then the plan can be implemented. So Bloomington now has the opportunity to transfer parking from a simple utility to strategic community access. That's by financial health, wayfinding, improving our technology, and making sure that we have a vibrant downtown. By investing wisely and building trust, we can create a parking system that enhances accessibility, boosts our city's vitality, and delivers real benefit for the entire community. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation.
You bet.
Are there questions from commissioners about the presentation? On my left? On my right? Mr. Flaherty.
Yeah, thank you. One question, I was just reviewing the commission's purview in the context of parking and seeking to better understand how these things fit together. So the commission is charged with producing or overseeing an annual analysis of parking asset management that includes but is not limited to reporting all costs and revenues for city-owned structured parking, surface parking, metered parking, neighborhood parking, documenting parking utilization rates and longitudinal trends of those rates, conducting or contracting for parking data analytics, and recommending changes to the parking system necessary to advance the goals of the comprehensive plan and other applicable city plans. And so I guess my question is this report meant to satisfy that? Is it distinct from that and something that's sort of like a less frequent type of review and proposed changes that would be complemented by annual reporting that actually looks at things like utilization rates, et cetera? Or how do those fit together in your mind?
So in my mind this is just the beginning. Mm-hmm. This is the beginning, and this report itself contains really important information, mm-hmm. but at the same time, it does not give you the full preview that you're asking for. So this is a building block to get to that. And it depends also on the parking technology we agree on. Mm-hmm. That will give us the occupancy and the things that, since we've come from Parking Commission to the Transportation Commission, which have been asked for.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So this is more like a foundational report.
Correct.
That lays the groundwork on which the annual reporting can be built. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Online, Ms. Davis, you have any questions? I can't see her, so. Okay, I'll just assume that's no, but get our attention if you do.
No.
Okay, thank you. First question, can you, Ms. Wall, for me, can you please send those slides to Iris Bull so that they can be added to the agenda?
I sure can.
Okay. Does your presentation imply that you, Michelle Wall, and the Parking Services Division endorses the findings of the Walker study?
No.
Because it seems like they're not presenting it, you are.
Correct, because they've already presented.
And your slides are saying, recommending their recommendations
Right.
as though these are the ones that you're going to make.
Well, they are, what this is we gave you the report, and that report, I'm doing a summary of that report for them. They've already been here once, that was contractual. And then the other meeting is for council that we put in the RFP. So they're meeting that obligation.
Okay,
Right
but
now,
just to be
this is-
clear, yeah.
Just
No,
to be
just to be clear, this does not constitute an endorsement of all the findings in the
No,
report.
this is presenting you their recommendations.
Do you have any initial thoughts about their findings? Is there
That-
anything you agree with or disagree with?
I agree with a lot, and I don't agree with some of them. So I'm not here to discuss that tonight because I think it takes more than me. It's going to take public comment. It's going to take a big lift from the Transportation Commission. It's going to be administration. It's going to be stakeholders. It's going to be businesses. Everybody needs a voice in this.
Okay. I know that the production of this report was delayed by, personal problems at Walker. What is the remainder of the timeline for the production of this report? Like, when are the next steps going to happen?
This is their final report.
But the
This is their
report,
final recommendation to us. We will take the feedback and we will regroup with the working group that I shared before and see if there's going to be any changes to that.
I'm
But
sorry, though,
this-
the report says quite clearly that they have a whole lot of data left to produce. That's not in this report. What's in this report as addenda are the questionnaires asked, but, I can pull up the part where it says that, but
I'm not sure what you're referencing,
Well-
Commissioner, sorry.
let me see if I can find it. They say in this report that, let me go back to the beginning here. This document serves as a summary, this is in the purpose. This document serves as a summary focusing on the findings and recommendations. Full details and additional information will be provided in the full report.
That is the full report. That's the executive report, the executive summary you're reading. The full report is behind it.
Okay, so for example, then the data about revenues from the parking system, they are bare bones at most.
We
Is
did
there-
not ask for a financial analysis in this report. This is a foundational report, as we said before.
That's not clear from the way that the report is written.
I will
So,
share that with them.
Is there going to be any revision of the report based on comments from the Transportation Commission?
Yeah, I need comments, and that's why I shared the Google sheet. I need comments back.
Okay, so you're saying that the comments we're making here are not, you're only going to share comments that we submit via the Google form? I'm not
Yeah,
clear.
and anything documented in this meeting, sure.
Okay. Did you have a question? All right. Mr. Flaherty.
It's helpful, some of the clarifying questions to me. So you mentioned that Walker will present to the city council when it hears their report or sees it. Will that be at the same time as the Title 15?
No.
Okay.
No,
okay,
they're
so-
just like I'm providing you a summary of this report, Walker has one more
Got
session
it.
where they'll do the same for them.
Got it.
I'm just doing it on their behalf.
Great. And while this conversation is helpful, certainly, what would be most helpful by way of giving additional, detailed feedback to you, and on what timeline, I guess? Just personally, with the packet coming out last week, and I was on vacation, I just haven't had a time for a deep read, and I'd love to. And one recommendation that struck me as a little odd was, I agree in principle with the high demand, low demand price, dynamic pricing or pricing differential, but a 1/4 an hour difference seemed too little to me, for instance. So that's just one example of some feedback I would probably give. Is there what's a good process to do that?
The Google sheet that Iris
Okay.
sent out,
Yeah, thank you.
it lists everything and it's in a straight form and it comes from you and I will send it straight to them. I will, of course, read them all, but I will send it to Walker as well for clarification.
Thank you.
I will point out on that form, it doesn't ask for personal identifying information. If you wanted to provide feedback anonymously, you could do it as well. There are just 10 fields that you can use to your heart's content and, in a whatever creative fashion you'd like. And if that's insufficient, more than welcome to email those comments or feedback to us directly, and we'll make sure that Michelle gets it.
Got it. So I see that I'm looking at the email, and it says ideally to share by, in advance of this meeting.
It's fine.
I get a cheat because I'm on city council too, so if we get to get feedback from there, I'll use that one. But it's okay if within, say, like the next week or so, folks are able to still submit comments. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got some more questions if nobody else does. Okay, let me see here. So in the staff memo attached to this, you write of, quote, balancing customer convenience and long-term sustainability and fairness. Is that the division's policy of equating sustainability with customer convenience?
It's in our action plan. It's in our climate action plan. We're linking all of these items to our comprehensive plan, our climate action plan, any of the plans that I shared, you guys shared with me, that you wanted me to share with Walker. All of that is comprehensive. All of that is going to be considered.
Okay, I'm going to want to find where in the comprehensive plan it says that those two things should be equal, but in the climate action plan, because I don't think it's what it says. Did the Parking Services Division take into account the Parking Commission's comprehensive policy when it was developing the spec for this report?
Yes, it knew it was in the Walker. I shared with Walker that it was in transition, and I gave him the Parking Commission purpose and all those documents that you were doing at the end of the closing of the commission, and then what is the expectation of this commission. I gave them both of those documents as guidelines.
Okay, so they received them, but there was no reflection of the commission's documents in their work or mention of the commission.
Of which
The
commission?
Parking Commission. This commission didn't exist yet, but their Parking Commission's comprehensive policy was an extant document that I assume you gave them.
I will have to review the document. I gave it to them. I'll have to, again, review the document and see if any of it's listed. I know
Okay.
they were focusing on the transition.
Okay, I do have some concern about specific data on pages 23 through 25 on the garage data. It says that average utilization across all locations ranged from 34 to 54% on page 23, but the table clearly says that that was peak data. That average data, I had to do the math, was as high as 41% at Morton during the day and as low as 13% in trades at night.
Yeah, that needed to be added to the Google Doc, and I'll have them review that.
I'm sorry, what?
That will need to be added as a comment to the Google Doc, and I'll be glad to address that with Walker.
Okay, will Walker correct the report if they've made mistakes?
If it's deemed incorrect by them, yes.
Okay,
They
and if
will
it's deemed
correct.
incorrect by the rest of us, and they don't think it's
No,
incorrect?
they will, of
Okay.
course, Steve, they're going
Okay.
to
I'm
consider
just trying to be clear here.
your comments and your feedback, and if they need to make it more clear, they'll be able to do that, sure.
Okay. I'll just point out, since I'm on the topic, that on page 24, there's another reference to average day, and then that refers to peak data. I can't tell if table 4 is showing peak data because it's not clear how different tables 4 and 5 differ from table 3. And also, I was stunned to read this on page 26. It says, parking utilization for on-street parking and surface lots is difficult to determine as payments can be made at the meter or on Park Mobile by zone rather than by individual space. Our analysis of this data excludes Park Mobile sessions as those are zone-based and not tied to an individual meter. Why was that so hard for Walker to do, to aggregate Park Mobile data with meter data?
Because there is no way to give you true occupancy of that space.
There's no way, sorry?
To give you true occupancy of that space.
I don't understand why not. I mean, if the Park Mobile is showing that a space is being paid for,
Right, but then somebody else could go ahead and park there, and they don't pay it, and they pay it after extension. There's a lot of reasons why you can't get true occupancy.
It's zone-based, so you're paying park in a zone.
What difference does it make? I mean,
You're paying more.
you still have an indication of usage.
You still have an indication, but it's not true usage. Because let's say you come from, it's allowed here to start a session in a certain zone and go to multiple zones. As long as you're paid by license plate, you're not paid by zone. We don't track it that way.
Do you see this image here on screen? This is from the 2018 Parking Commission report. And while you may not be able to get pinpoint accuracy as to whether a car is in the space or not, what I would think, would care about would be dollars received, because that's as good an indication as any, short of putting sensors in parking spaces. And the reason I call your attention to this chart now is that from the 2018 report, we can already see a very significant trend from 2016 to 2018. Usage of the app of Park Mobile was 13% of all revenue at meters in 2017. It had increased to 18% by 2018. I would be dumbfounded if usage of the app as a portion of all usage did not exceed 40% by now. But it's still certainly going to be significant. And Walker didn't study it at all. Didn't even report the amount of data, or the amount of revenue brought in by Park Mobile. I mean, why can't we use that? Why couldn't it have been a separate table?
You're more than welcome to use that form, Steve. I can address that with them. I'll be glad to.
That's disappointing. All right. Well, there's more. I guess my alternative is to use the form, but I'm just going to say the Parking Commission was not consulted on the development of the RFP for this report, and I think you can see that we might have asked for some more detail here. Do you think that there is going to be an opportunity for Walker to do anything, to add any more detail than they already have, or are they simply going to correct errors that may be pointed out to them?
The only thing I can do is take your feedback back and work with Walker and let you guys know.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
further questions from members on the report? Mr. Flaherty?
Oh, questions or comments?
Either?
Comments. Just briefly, thank you for your work on this, and I
You
look
bet.
forward to hearing the recommendations. And I think I would be interested for the commission in its work going forward to work to find alignment on its purview and what we anticipate reporting on annually.
Yep.
I know this was started before the commission existed, as noted, but yeah, making sure that we're getting in sync on, okay, here's the baseline. What do we have that we're going to be able to build on? Are there any things that are missing? Things like, utilization, other technology changes that we need to enable that, all that. Just so that my vision and hope is that we arrive at a place where we have a clear set of metrics that we
Yes.
are measuring and making informed decisions based on, and that we're all on the same page.
Totally
So,
agree.
Thank you.
I hope to partner with you.
Any other comments from members? Last question I guess I have is, again, what is the deadline for submitting comments?
I'd say probably another 2 weeks. I mean, that's fine. I'll give you another 2 weeks.
Okay, so May 11th, Monday, May 11th?
Monday, May 11th.
All right, comments are open until Monday, May 11th on the Walker report as presented. Thank you so much for making the presentation.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing the final draft. Let's move on now to the next item. I have lost track of. We're looking at the North Walnut Street project update. Who's here to present on North Walnut Street? I'm sorry, I didn't have any public comment on the report. Madam Clerk, did you? City Clerk Nicole Bolden was here, and I meant to ask her for her opinion on the report. Do you have time to make a comment, since you're city staff as well? All right. I knew there was somebody I forgot to call on.
Good evening, Commissioners. City Clerk Nicole Bolden. And I would actually ask Ms. Wall if she'd be willing to share the Google form that you shared with commissioners for clerk staff. They have some input on some of the data that was reported in the Walker report that was incorrect. So we'd like to make sure that they have an opportunity to correct it before it comes before council, so we don't have to do it in front of council as well. That said, we did review the report in the clerk's office with an eye toward the recommendations as it impacted the clerk's office. Our assessment was that while this was definitely heavy in terms of community review and input and benchmarking with other peer cities, it was lacking in some hard data or context for the data that was reported. For example, some of the numbers that were provided related to appeals was incorrect. So some of the numbers were either inflated or not reported. It reported partial data. If you're seeing appeal data, but you're not seeing void data as well, that actually ends up in impacting the numbers of citations that are being voided or dismissed through the city. Sometimes there are large numbers of voids that are done due to officer error. Some of them are done due to user error. And we have seen an increase of those over the last few years. Since Park Mobile was installed with the city in 2020, we've definitely seen an uptick in some of those dismissals where people just mistakes. If systems are down, you see more dismissals. If there are errors made on a broad scale, you see large lumps of those things done. So part of what we do in our office is we don't only track, reviewing parking citation appeals for errors, but we look for trends in parking enforcement and signage as well. So a lot of the things that we see that come out of the office are tracked and communicated to the appropriate departments, including parking, streets, or whomever. So I'm concerned overall with the report because it seems to be lacking, and I was really happy to hear Ms. Wall say that she agreed with Mr. Flaherty's desire to have metrics and numbers that we're all agreeing on, because right now that's not what's in place. And I'm happy to answer any questions about appeals or some of the data. And if you don't know them right now, we're available. So.
Well, we do have 2 more weeks for comments to be open that people can certainly submit. But while this other city staff is here, is there any other questions from commissioners on the report for the clerk? Seeing none, thank you for that last-minute input. Sorry to forget that. Thanks to parking staff for staying for that extra input. If there's no other objection, we'll go on to the North Walnut Street project update.
Hi again, Andrew Seaboard, just providing an update. Last year, you received, was I think an inquiry, but also we discussed the resurfacing project where we made some changes to North Walnut Street, north of the bypass. And most of our discussion was focused on the area of the Blue Ridge intersection. But just wanted to come to you and share the sort of before and after speed data snapshot. So we are comparing traffic counts or speed data from 2024 with 2026 data. And we're really looking at traffic entering the intersection being the Blue Ridge entrance. So if you just really briefly, I'll highlight going northbound, where we didn't significantly alter the design. There was 1 lane before, there remained 1 lane, there was a bike lane. We've got a buffered bike lane now. You can see that before the project, the average northbound speed entering the intersection was about 45 miles an hour with an 85th percentile about 50. After the project, the more recent data shows that speeds jumped up about 3 miles an hour without making meaningful design changes to impact traffic going in that direction. I think just a hypothesis on what we're seeing there is usually after we resurface roads and the condition becomes smoother and more favorable for driving, speeds tend to go up. And as roads degrade and get more bumpy, people tend to slow down. So that is likely a factor in that. But the real change in the design was where we removed the second climbing lane going southbound. Prior to the project, if you remember, there was 2 lanes, and after the project, there's just 1 lane with a turn lane into the neighborhood. So before the project, the average southbound speed was about 50 miles an hour with an 85th percentile 54. Those speeds basically dropped to nearly 10 miles an hour after the project. So really meaningful difference, especially considering that the pavement is also smoother and in better condition. So very successful, and we're pleased to see those results. Still certainly recognize speeds are fast, but just wanting to highlight that the design change that we intentionally made to address speeding did have a meaningful input. And so just wanted to share that with you, and I think we're definitely making it a point to highlight the update with the neighborhood who was interested previously. But just wanted to share that data with you, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you for the report. Are there questions for Mr. Seabour on the North Walnut Street update? To my right, Mr. Binder.
Thank you very much. Just one quick question, which is about the the northbound traffic speeds, which you noted actually did increase by a couple of miles per hour, which I think engineering attributes to that there were not as substantive design changes made to the northbound configuration. Do you have thoughts on what, if any, future treatments to the northbound lane configuration might be applied to? Because I mean, we're seeing like an 85th percentile speed of 53 miles per hour, like in a 40 mile per hour, speed zone is, probably not the outcome that we're looking for. So I guess with the lessons learned from the southbound improvement to speed compliance, are there any northbound treatments that you guys are at least kind of initially investigating as a result? Thank
My
you.
question too.
I guess honestly at this point, this was mostly just a report of what we have found. We haven't really done a deep dive into what further action we would do here, recognizing there's a lot of other streets in the city that also have speeding issues. I think that it would be hard for us to replicate the change of removing a travel lane, but I think, I know from other discussions I believe we've had at this commission is we are seeming to find some benefit to things like the speed feedback signs that in the past, I think I had more of an opinion those are effective in the short term and on temporary usages, but as we've had a couple deployed for longer terms, we're still seeing some success. So tools like that may be useful, and certainly also continuing to track the state's program of automated speed enforcement. They've got a pilot program where they're able to do some automatic speed enforcement on construction zones on freeways that we're just hoping is successful and ultimately becomes something more widespread, but that may be a long-term goal or dream.
Thank you.
Further questions, Mr. Flaherty?
Yeah, I'm encouraged by the improvements southbound. As you know, we heard a neighborhood petition around this late last year, and we didn't choose to act on it at that time, in part because we wanted to see how some of these improvements were faring. So the question isn't directly on point to these improvements, but it's related to the safety of the area. And I'm trying to recall, among options that were discussed at that time was like whether or not a pedestrian and bicyclist, crossing refuge could occur on North Walnut, where Blue Ridge, the Blue Ridge neighborhood has that entrance. Was one of the barriers there that there's a drive cut on the west side of the street for a business as well? Am I remembering that correctly?
That sounds right, and I guess I don't want to, I'm not speaking with much confidence right now.
I will hold you to nothing.
I think that would have been a factor, and just, I guess I'll just leave it there.
Okay. I'm just going back to thinking about it in the options here having driven by the area a number of times since we discussed, just recognizing that Visit Bloomington, which is the business I think that rents that building, which might be owned by the county government, has 2 entrances, and it seems like they're really not necessary, and that if closing the northern entrance, even if we needed to acquire right-of-way or whatever that would entail, if that afforded opportunity for future safety improvements, because even with the reduced speeds, which are significant and very helpful, those are still are relatively high speeds for someone trying to walk or bike across both directions of the lanes from both directions of travel, and especially with some of the sight lines and hill stuff. So anyway, just a thought for future is that we could consider that as well if we hadn't previously.
Yeah, no, that's fair. We can certainly consider that more. And I do recall a lot of the discussion was more about cyclists trying to cross to get into the southbound bike lane. There are, of course, no pedestrian facilities on North Walnut in this area. I do remember the neighborhood was also particularly interested in that northern driveway and trying to get a left turn, so closing it would be, but that was just the neighborhood's opinion at that time.
It's on the screen, the northern drive cut of the Visit Bloomington facility. It matches Blue Ridge, and the southern cut is a couple hundred feet south of it.
That's
so
right.
That's the intersection, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. And the pedestrian infrastructure on the west side of the street does start almost immediately out of frame there, so it wouldn't be a far connection to make for pedestrians either. So anyway, thank you.
Further questions for Mr. Seabour on the North Walnut Street report?
Actually, just have one.
Well, I just want to check with online. Ms. Davis, any questions? To my left? All right, let's go to round two. Mr. Binder.
Just a quick follow-up, actually, kind of related to the differential between the north and southbound travel speeds observed. I would just be curious to hear kind of your thoughts on, or just theories on like why there is such a difference, because on the surface, it doesn't seem like there ought to be, because the configuration in both directions is, I think, basically the same. The lane width, travel lane width is probably very similar, if not the same. And then, the bike lane and so forth. Do you attribute it to like the fact that it's like going uphill, downhill, or like in and out of town, like people leaving town, they figure like, oh, on my way out of town, I'll speed up. Is that kind of what you're, just in your sort of professional experience, is that what you have observed in the past?
Really good question. Again, what I'm offering, I think, our hypothesis on why the speeds went up, with it just being a smoother road surface. I can't definitively say that was a factor. I think on why one direction is higher speed than another, I have to imagine at least a component of that is the elevation and the grade going downhill. We tend to see higher speeds than vehicles going uphill. And so that I'm sure is a significant part, but maybe there are other parts too.
And then actually just really quick, does engineer, I'm trying to think about how to frame this, does engineering tend to consider the change in elevation when determining street treatments? Like, if a road is going downhill, like, does that warrant different types of treatments than the same the same road going the other direction? Like, have there been cases where you guys have, specifically had to account for like a pretty big difference in the speed going the different directions, and in like what kind of design is applied?
It's a good question. I honestly can't think of a specific example of how we would design it differently, though recognizing that if speeds are different, there are like just how quickly somebody can stop going downhill, plus at a higher speed, that does factor into the equations in ways we analyze. So there are factors, but I don't know if I have a really good answer to say how we would design it significantly different one way or the other.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions on this report? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Seabour. We'll continue now, go on to cases. We have first up TCP 2610, a corridor study of Indiana Avenue from Smith to 10th Street to adopt the conceptual plan for the Indiana Avenue Safety Improvements Project. Who is here to present? I see Hank Duncan.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Hank Duncan, Safe Streets Program Manager. As we get the slides prepared, I do want to say this presentation will be a little bit longer than I usually like presenting for. So if you have any questions as I go forward, please feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand, let me know, because I want to make sure that we keep this as efficient as possible. Yes.
Will the presentation be longer than 20 minutes?
No.
Okay, very good.
No.
Please go ahead.
So a bit of background. Cool, this works. So I'm here talking about the Indiana Avenue Safety Improvements Project. A bit of background on this. So you all have heard this before. The city has a Safe Streets Priority Network, and it has been determined by these 4 factors here. The high injury network, that is backwards-looking fatal and severe injury crashes, forward-looking risk of future fatal and severe injury crashes, public input, and demographics of the surrounding area of each corridor. Indiana Avenue from the Henderson and Smith intersection up to Indiana and 10th is identified on the Safe Streets Priority Network, specifically between Atwater and 10th. It is defined as a highest priority category. Along the corridor, there are a number of priority intersections: Henderson and Smith, Atwater, 3rd, 4th, Kirkwood, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. All of those are identified on the Safe Streets Priority Network and the city's adopted Safe Streets for All action plan. That is the impetus for this project. Goals for this project: number 1, increase safety for all road users. Number 2, more connectivity along and across the corridor. It's the boundary between campus and downtown for a large portion of it. And create a fully accessible corridor. That is the baseline for any project we work on. And then finally, increase downtown vibrancy. This has been a long and winding road of a public outreach and design process for this project. I won't go through each of these steps, but we started public outreach and design back in spring of 2024. We are now in the spring of 2026. It's been 2 years. We have hosted 4 different public meetings, have had a number of online surveys, have done pop-up events, have met with dozens and dozens of stakeholders on and along and nearby the corridor. And we feel that we are at a point in which we can present a concept to you for review. Going into some of the more objective observations and traffic counts of the corridor, the busiest section of the corridor is between 6th and 7th Street with about 6,900 vehicles per day. For reference, a normal, and this depends on context, but a normal 1-lane road can carry up to about 10,000 vehicles a day. That's a general statement, but that is generally what we say. And this section of Indiana Avenue is 2 lanes, 1-way northbound. We also did traffic counts specifically on Indiana University football game days because we want to observe not just a normal weekday amount of traffic, but also when we have large events in our city near the corridor, how does traffic on the corridor respond to that? And frankly, we didn't see much of an effect. The first game day that we took counts on, it was also the same weekend as the 4th Street Arts Festival, so Grant Street was closed. There was more traffic on Indiana Avenue, and we saw a minor jump of about 400 vehicles within that weekend. We also took traffic counts on a game day later that fall. This is 2024, and traffic counts were actually lower on those days than during a normal week. We also took traffic and pedestrian counts specifically surrounding the Indiana Avenue and Kirkwood Avenue intersection, folks interacting with this intersection. We saw, and this is one specific hour on one specific day, so there is a margin of error here, but within the hours of noon to 1 on October 3rd of 2024, we saw 400 vehicles pass through this intersection. In that same time, we saw 1,100 pedestrians pass through this intersection. We as a city design all of our projects with pedestrians in mind. That is the goal. This area in particular, it is rare that you see pedestrians outnumber motor vehicles and vehicles as a whole that much. We also went out and observed the corridor while CBU was working on their Hidden River Pathway project. So this is back in the fall of 2024. They were digging that culvert on Indiana Avenue, and for this portion of time, Indiana Avenue was reduced to one lane of through traffic. So we wanted to go out, observe what are traffic patterns when it is one lane without any other changes. The primary factor in traffic flow disruption is pedestrian crossings, specifically at Kirkwood Avenue. You have relatively free-flowing pedestrian crossings, and it creates queues backing up on Indiana Avenue, especially during IU passing periods. Other activity, like buses coming through, we see about 16 IU and city buses per hour, plus your private apartment shuttles coming through each hour, and then deliveries and loadings and pickups for the businesses in that block between 4th Street and Kirkwood Avenue that can disrupt traffic flow as well. Queues are typically only a few vehicles, but sometimes do extend to 4th Street and beyond 4th Street. The overall takeaway here on these observations is that the intersection functions as pedestrian priority because there is a more free-flowing nature to the pedestrians, and vehicle congestion is driven by intersection control and crossing activity rather than just the traffic volume alone. That's all to say that even though the traffic volume is not as high as a two-lane street may need, there are other activities like pedestrian crossings, buses, loadings that do disrupt traffic flow. Looking at speeds on the corridor, the highest speed sections of the project area are between 6th and 7th Street and 9th and 10th, with 50th percentile speeds around 26 miles an hour, 85th percentile speeds around 30 miles an hour. Community outreach. I will go through each round of community outreach we did and provide a couple of concise points about what we found, how we moved on from there. The first round, we always come in with a blank slate. We want to hear from the public what's working, what's not working, what are your priorities. This was one of the questions that we asked the public through an online survey and a public meeting about what is important to you in a safety project on Indiana Avenue. We gave them 16 options and asked the public to rank them all in terms of priority. Those top 5 priorities are the ones that we looked at the most. Slowing down vehicles, adding adequate sidewalks, adding protected bike lanes, improving the intersections for vehicles and bicycles, and number 1, improving the intersections for pedestrians. Again, a lot of the feedback we get is more nuanced than simply these numbers, but this is a good framework to go off of in terms of community values as we move forward. Throughout this entire process, from rounds 1 through 4, we coordinated with dozens of stakeholders, internally, externally, local businesses, Indiana University, neighborhood associations, you name it. This first round concept that we came up with attempts to use the feedback we saw in that first round and put something pen to paper, put a drawing to it. And what this is a one-lane street northbound with a two-way protected bike lane. And I'm just showing you a section of this project because the screen's not long enough to show you all of it. So this is the section between 4th and 6th Street. Essentially what this does is 1, it improves intersections for pedestrians. And pedestrians only have to cross 1 lane of traffic instead of 2. Number 2, it slows down traffic. 1 lane of traffic versus 2 lanes of traffic, especially north of 6 where you have very wide lanes, slows down traffic. And number 3, it adds a new bike connection through the downtown and campus area, north and southbound. We also, in this second round of public outreach, we wanted to present multiple concepts to the public. So we attempted to come up with a concept B and essentially let the public choose which one they liked more. These are both ideas that we as staff would implement if recommended by stakeholders in the public. And so this concept B converts Indiana Avenue into a 2-way street. From Kirkwood north to 10th, you have striped bike lanes. From Kirkwood south to 3rd, you have sharrows. And I will mention in each of these concepts at the uncontrolled intersections, 6th, 8th, and 9th, we implemented raised crosswalks as well. So we asked the public, which one do you prefer more? And the answer, again, is more nuanced than simply these percentages, but it was pretty clear that they preferred the one lane with a two-way protected bike lane over simply a two-way street. So that was the basis we went off of for this next round of public outreach. This is very similar to the first concept that you saw, just a little bit more cleaned up. It also adds in a bus pull-off north of Kirkwood. Indiana University has a lot of events in Bryan Hall and Franklin Hall, just east of Indiana Avenue, and so loading was a major concern for them. So we added a long bus pull-off for box trucks, other delivery vehicles. If IU has an event, they can pull off and stay there as well. Some comments and questions that were raised during this round of public outreach were about traffic congestion, curbside management between 4th and Kirkwood, again looking at the availability of parking, the propensity for delivery trucks or your DoorDash or Uber Eats drivers to block a lane of traffic to pick up a delivery, transit efficiency. Again, we see 16 buses through here per hour. We want to make sure that buses are still efficient. And then 4, pedestrian safety. From there, staff went back and looked internally about these options and how we should move forward. We wanted to examine more, is this the right way forward, or is there another idea out there that could be better than what we're proposing? So we ended up coming up with 2 photorealistic renderings of possible ideas to informally reach out to the public and examine what they have to think. One is the concept A that I've talked about. This is one lane with a two-way protected bike lane. We also came up with concept C, which between 4th and 6th Street would convert Indiana Avenue into a transit mall, making it bus only, and compensating for the lack of northbound traffic on Indiana through downtown with a converted two-way Dunn Street. The idea behind this is that pedestrians would have more free-flowing access to and from campus and downtown, buses would be more efficient, and you would have spots for loading or deliveries or parklets, whatever we desired as a city. So we went out to Kirkwood Avenue and essentially asked street users, what do you think of these concepts? They very much preferred concept C, the transit mall concept with the two-way Dunn Street. That was honestly a bit surprising to me, but it was interesting to hear their feedback. That said, when we began speaking with Indiana University about these ideas, they had major operational concerns about this idea, and so this never made it to formal public outreach because we want to be good partners with IU. The city and IU work on a lot of projects together, and we want to make sure that we continue that good relationship. So because they had major concerns, we did not move forward with this transit mall concept. That said, while they had hesitations with concept A, we worked together to form a revised version of it with the main change of maintaining 2 motor vehicle lanes through the section of 3rd and 7th Street on Indiana Avenue. They had major operational concerns if the street were reduced to 1 lane, and so after months of discussions, we came up with this concept. Essentially, the bike infrastructure, it connects Kirkwood to 10th Street, and there's another stub that connects the existing multi-use path on Smith up to 3rd, but in the section between 3rd and Kirkwood, there is no bike infrastructure other than a northbound Sharrow, and largely keeps that area in existing conditions. The only major change is that they were very much in favor of raised intersections at Kirkwood and 4th, and so we included those in the concept here. We reached out to the public and the community in our 4th round of outreach with this concept. The major comments and questions raised were about the disconnected bike network between 3rd and Kirkwood. There were questions about the need for 2 motor vehicle lanes. There were questions about the bicycle crossings at the project termini, which weren't shown in the slides, but the project engineer, Kendall Kanoki, can go over that when he goes over the current concept. And then similar concepts to the round 2 outreach regarding curbside management, congestion, transit efficiency. So that is the large, high-level review of the process and the outreach that we've done throughout this process. I will throw it over to our project engineer, Kendall Kanoki, to talk about the currently proposed concept before you this evening. Before we throw it over to him, do you have any questions about the process itself and how we got here?
I think we should just hold questions until you finish your complete presentation.
Perfect, sounds great.
But please stick around because we may have questions for you.
Hello, everyone. Kendall Kanoki, Engineering Department. So I just wanted to talk very briefly because I know our 20 minutes are fast ending here.
Can you introduce yourself?
Reintroduce myself?
Sorry, I missed it. Hi.
Kendall
Sorry.
Kanoki, Engineering Department.
Okay.
Yeah. So just wanted to go over the preferred concept we have right now with you. I'm going to start on the south end at Smith Avenue and Henderson. Kind of interesting to start at the end because these are the 2 probably least ironed out parts of this. How do we tie into our existing bicycle network? Kind of the idea behind what you see here is that a few years ago, the Smith-Hunter Greenway, a connection was made between Smith and Hunter, which is right here kind of off the page, that built this kind of existing 2-way bike facility here, and the idea was to facilitate east-west bike traffic. Henderson is 1-way north, so southbound cyclists were not allowed to go on the street, and it was an awkward disconnect in that network. So because that existing facility was there, we kind of wanted to extend off of what was already built. I think when we dive into this a little further, we could evaluate the future, Henderson corridor all the way down to Hillside and beyond, and maybe decide to do something different here, but that's what we're showing right now. One thing that's really beautiful about the 2-way protected bike facility being on this side of the road is there's no conflicting vehicle movements. Atwater is 1-way east, so you have no one turning across it at all. And then flipping over to the east side of the road here, you have the same benefit at this intersection at 3rd Street where there's no conflicting vehicle movements there. So that's one benefit of it. There's a lot of ways we could switch sides for the 2-way protected bike lane or not switch it at all. And that kind of still needs to be further evaluated, but right now this is where we're at, and there's just a lot of pros and cons to the various options there, but I'll kind of continue. So, crossing the street, again, this is shown as a raised crossing. It is a yield to the bikes and not the cars. There's certainly a conversation that could be had about flipping that. Right now, that's just what we're showing. That's kind of in line with most of our other crossings in the city. And then continuing on to 3rd, you kind of merge into that 1-way bike facility that's heading westbound. And then you enter this area where there's no bike infrastructure, so that's kind of an interesting transition. So northbound cyclists can obviously continue in the roadway in one of the 2 vehicle lanes. Southbound cyclists are going to have to come from somewhere else. Ostensibly, they might go down Dunn Street, connect in on Atwater, or some other way. But that's where we're at right now. So then that's where the 2 lanes start. Of course, an interesting feature here is since we're bringing Henderson and Indiana kind of transitions here down to 1 lane, there's really no need to have both of these lanes extend down to this intersection because at one time you have right-turning vehicles and then another time you have straight vehicles. So there's only 1 lane of traffic entering at one time. So you're kind of able to safely dump your cyclists off into the street here with a Sharrow, and then continuing through the corridor. We have a raised intersection at 4th Street, which, as Hank mentioned, IU is really in favor of those. We do maintain the street parking along the west side of Indiana, and then this kind of, we're showing it really as just, it could be parking, it could be, there was a desire by one business owner, they really like their, their setup in the summer for the summer dining program, so it could be that, it could be loading and unloading of trucks or, delivery vehicles, Uber, Lyft, things like, so this is kind of a space, haven't decided exactly what it is. Currently, it's mostly parking, but that's maintained along with the 2 vehicle travel lanes. And then we shift everybody over to the existing west curb line, go over the iconic Kirkwood and Indiana intersection there, showing a nice, decorative paver at that intersection. It's a raised intersection shown here. And then that's where we're able to restart the 2-way protected bike lane. So really, it's this 2-block area that's very tight. There's a huge desire from IU for 2 vehicle lanes. There's a huge desire from the businesses for the parking, loading, outdoor dining, whatever you want to call that space, the flex space there. So it's kind of balancing all those priorities right now. Unfortunately, the bike infrastructure doesn't make it in this iteration of the concept. But then you continue north, and I'll try to be really brief finishing this up. Another raised intersection at 6th Street. We're able to kind of tie in our bike infrastructure with the existing 7th Street protected bike lane. And then really north of 7th, you have a lot of space to work with. I think, I don't know if Hank mentioned this, but parking is pretty underutilized on the street. It's neighborhood parking areas. I think there were a total of like 7 spots that were parked in or something. So this concept is showing no parking on Indiana in this area. We have the raised crosswalks at 8th. And I think we're showing them at 9th too. I'm not sure why they're not showing up here, but, and then you get to the 10th Street, and that's kind of the end of the project. So this is an interesting transition area. Right now we're kind of showing an idea where, assuming that Indiana will have bike lanes painted north of 10th, you have to get the cyclists over to the east side of the roadway. So this is kind of an idea of showing they merge in with traffic, kind of have their own left turn lane here, and then can join in prior to the intersection. Again, this is another area that we want to look at a lot harder and see what the absolute best way to kind of transition everything together here is. Of course, 10th Street is also another project that's being looked at, so there's definitely opportunities to coordinate both projects. But I think I will end it there, and is that the end of our presentation? We'll open it up for questions.
Thank you both for the presentation. Just to remind everybody, we're in cases now, so we're going to have 1 round of questions followed by public comment, followed by a 2nd round of questions, and then discussion of the case among commissioners. So let's now go to 1st round questions. Is there any commissioner who has questions for staff on this case? We'll start online. Ms. Davis? You don't have to have questions, but now's a good chance to.
Still formulating.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Anybody on my left with 1st round questions? On my right, Mr. Binder.
I'll try to just stick to questions. So I'd be curious to know more about, I guess, IU's involvement in this design process. I mean, I don't want to speak for the rest of the commission, but I think we're all looking at this in somewhat in bewilderment that a design is being shown here that clearly does not meet the bicycle network connectivity goals for this project. So I can't imagine many or any of us are going to be satisfied with the design as presented, proposed currently. But back to the IU thing, were representatives, from the relevant departments at IU invited to this meeting? And if not, then why not? And if so, where are they?
Sure, good questions. So to your first question as to what extent IU has been involved with this project, we have been meeting with them for literally years on this now. We first brought this to them, I believe, during the first round of public outreach as a base concept of we are working on this project, and through each round of public outreach and design revision, we have been sending updates and have met with them. And then especially last year was when discussions became more regular and serious about this project as it became more real and how it would affect IU in the long run for campus operations. In terms of their involvement for tonight, some members of the IU capital planning staff were invited to this meeting tonight. They declined to attend, but again, they have been very involved with this project, and they felt that their stance had been made clear to staff and been presented in this design presented to you tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Duncan, I understand that, all you guys can do is invite them. You can't force them to appear here. But I still, I'm just kind of baffled at, the fact that representatives from IU Capital Planning can apparently provide a lot of backroom input on this project, but then they don't show up to this meeting. I mean, if I agree, IU should be very deeply involved in this project, but to that point, they should be here.
Let's save the comment for later. Let's now go to questions. Mr. Flaherty.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your work on this and for the presentation. I'm concerned about safety, I think as we all are on this street, and in particular, what some of the revisions between prior concept day that had a continuous protected bike lane and the current proposed concept, what the impacts of that are from a safety perspective. And so what do you expect southbound bicyclists to do if their destination is 2nd and Henderson, they're coming southbound from 10th Street, they get to Kirkwood, the two-way protected bike lane disappears for 2 blocks. What are they supposed to do, and what do you think will happen?
Sure, good question. So we are imagining that southbound cyclists, if on Indiana Avenue, would go 1 block west to Dunn Street, cross on Dunn Street, down to Henderson and Smith, and then join with that existing multi-use path at Henderson and Smith and continue southbound from there.
So 3-block detour, yeah.
Essentially, yes.
You got it, 3 blocks north-south, but yeah. Do you think there's a risk that this design choice will induce unsafe or risky behaviors, in particular bicyclists riding on the sidewalk, pedestrians stepping into the street to avoid bicyclists riding on the sidewalk, bicyclists riding in the street against traffic, those types of things?
Sure. I don't want to assume any future behavior. I think those are great questions, and those are questions that we have thought of as well in terms of what may happen.
But isn't that what we're doing here? We're making assumptions about levels of risk of different designs based on best practices. And I know we can't conclude exactly what will happen for any individual user, but I don't think I don't think the exact opposite end is sufficient either. Like everything we're doing here about design is predicting how people will respond to interventions like raised crosswalks, like, So I guess, do you think it's reasonable for one to expect that there will be unsafe behaviors induced by this design choice?
Unsafe behaviors by cyclists?
Or pedestrians, or, I don't know.
I think that's a fair question. I think that's a fair comment, honestly. Yes.
It's a concern. Okay, thank you. I do have other questions, but I'll stop there.
Well, let's stick to questions here and save comments for after second round. Mr. Strasburg.
How would you characterize the feedback from Bloomington Transit about this? In particular, the 7th and Woodlawn, I know has been a challenge for buses to make that turn.
Yeah, sure. So the 7 line was a learning lesson for the city as a whole in terms of design requirements for buses and larger vehicles and turning radii. Kendall and the engineering staff honestly did a great job in working with transit and fire in terms of finding the biggest vehicle necessary needed to turn onto and from Indiana Avenue and making sure that the turning radii were large enough for those vehicles. Bloomington Transit has the new EV buses, which are now I believe, the largest city vehicles used. And so we are making our turning radii large enough for those buses. In addition, you talked about 7th and Woodlawn. Right by there is the bus island that intersects the 7 line, where there's a bus stop and bus island for pedestrians to wait for the buses, and a crossing spot for pedestrians to cross the 7 line as they go to the bus. In previous iterations of this concept A, we worked with BT to consolidate their stops at Indiana and 4th and Indiana and Kirkwood to put the stop north of Kirkwood, thereby allowing more space for the buses to stop, queue, not affect the always stop traffic at Kirkwood, and have a large bus island similar to the one at 7th and Woodlawn, so pedestrians could cross the bike lane and wait there.
Thank you.
Did you say 7th and Woodlawn?
Yes.
You mean next to the IMU?
Just west of 7th and Woodlawn, there is a bus stop and bus island.
Ah, okay. It took me a while to place it. Further questions, Mr. Strasburg? Mr. Kopic?
I guess my only concern really is like Mr. Flaherty said, the section between 3rd and Kirkwood. I mean, nobody's going to ride their bike down to Dunn Street and come back around. And I could see the people don't want to give up their parking there in front of, was that Buffalo's in there? But still, I think you need to resolve that section in there.
Is there a
my
question?
only comment. My comment is.
We're on questions now, Mr. Kopic. We're questions.
My question is, how much contact did you have with the businesses in that one section through there?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I know that we've talked about our relationship with IU quite a bit so far this discussion, but we have also met a lot with the local businesses. You have Qdoba's, Dagwood, Starbucks, Indiana Shop, Mr. Tokyo, et cetera. There are quite a bit of restaurants and shops within that block face, and a variety of opinions on how the city should either maintain parking, increase parking, reduce parking, how we should use that curb-to-curb space to maximize the vibrancy and safety of that area. Right now, Buffalo's, they are involved in the city's parklet program. So they have essentially deferred the on-street parking in front of their space to have more outdoor seating. You have businesses like Starbucks who would very much love for all of this space to be loading and short-term pickups and drop-offs because they have a lot of mobile orders and a lot of short-term pickups and drop-offs. There are other businesses like Dagwoods who very much value the on-street parking in front of their spot. So there's not one consensus, but talking with the Kirkwood Community Association, Downtown Bloomington, Inc., there is still a concern of how would these businesses be affected by the reduction in parking in front of their stores? And we want to be respectful of that.
Mr. Kopic? Okay. Ms. Davis?
Speaking specifically to that stretch, has there been any thought to talking with IU and those business owners about maybe dedicating more of that parking lot just behind it to your pickups, your deliveries? Because, you know, as a wheelchair user, what I can tell you is that there is somebody always blocking the alley along Indiana because they're going into Starbucks. Or it's a huge delivery truck that is also partially blocking the alley. Seems to me that problem isn't going to go away. So I wonder if we could move those people off of Indiana, those vehicles off of Indiana.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I have a bit of history on this in terms of what I've learned from talking to business owners. this is not by any means official, so I wouldn't quote myself on this, but from what I learned from business owners, there used to be deliveries happening in that parking lot behind, your Qdoba, Dagwoods area. All of that property is owned by IU, and at some point, IU or whoever else may own that property stopped deliveries from happening back there. Again, I don't know why, how, or when, but there used to be at one point, now there isn't.
I don't know, seems to me if they're going to force less bike infrastructure, they could at least give up some parking infrastructure. Sorry, that's not a question, it's a comment.
We're going to have time for comments. Do you have any more questions right now? All right. Well, let's we'll go to the public, but I want to take a chance first. First couple of very brief clarifying questions. If there was a bike lanes between 3rd and Kirkwood, they would be on the east side of Indiana. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, in that scenario, is there any loss of parking spaces on the west side of Indiana?
It depends on what we would want to do with that other section of the curb-to-curb area. There is definitely a possibility that we could, as a city, maintain 2 northbound lanes through this section and include that two-way protected bike lane.
Okay, but I mean, if in the scenario of a one lane, if we reduce car traffic to 1 lane, the parking stays as it was?
Not necessarily. What we would probably want to work with parking services and local businesses on is creating more of a flex zone.
You're getting into my next question. I just first want to ask, is there any reduction of linear parking space footage as a result of going down to 1 car lane there? Like, in other words, there's still that space to be worked with.
Yes. That space is still there.
Okay. So now the question I want to ask that's related to what you were about to say is, if there's one thing I've heard traffic related in my many years involved in city government, it's a complaint about delivery trucks parked between 6th and 7th and Walnut in front of the bars, that they block 3 lanes to 1. The second most commented complaint is the intersection Ms. Davis mentioned, the alley between 4th and Kirkwood on Indiana. It sounds like staff is already thinking about making some of that space more delivery friendly. Please, is that what you were about to say?
Yes. So in previous iterations of this concept with a 1-lane Indiana Avenue, we would want to begin serious discussions on converting the on-street parking area between 4th and Kirkwood into more of a flex zone.
A what?
Into a flex zone.
Flex zone.
That could be parts of the day delivery, parts of the day on-street parking. It could be 15 to 30-minute loading or drop-off and pickup, a variety of uses because there are a variety of uses on that curbside. We know that really the main uses are on-street parking, big deliveries for restaurants, Starbucks, et cetera, with bigger box trucks or semis. And then 3, your short-term deliveries, your Ubers, Uber Eats, DoorDashes.
Well, has staff ever contemplated simply saying no deliveries in a certain period of time, that maybe deliveries need to be done at different times of day than, I mean, it seems to be the same problem that we had before meters, where employees were parking in front of businesses and then wondering why they had trouble, finding customers. If the businesses are using this right-of-way to block potential customers, shouldn't we be, for their own sake, restricting the use for delivery?
So for your initial question about it was delivery specific times, right? We have contemplated it, and that is something that if we move forward with any project that reduces the number of lanes on a street where we see delivery vehicles parking in the lane to deliver, we would contemplate that. That would require a lot more discussion with the businesses because they have different vendors. You know, you talk to, say, Starbucks, they get almost everything from one vendor. They know about what time that truck's going to come. They know when it's going to come. They are in contact with their driver. That one's easy. There are other shops, say the Indiana shop, that deals with a lot of different vendors. You have different merchandise manufacturers delivering things. So it would require a lot of coordination. That is not to say it couldn't happen, but we would want to make sure that coordination happens before we build anything in concrete.
Okay, but I mean, have you not heard the same complaints I've heard about delivery trucks generally blocking traffic?
Yes.
And is the idea of maybe pulling the restriction that only one lane has to be, that's a question for another matter. I'll leave it for later. Thank you for the answer to that. I have more questions, but we're going to go now to public comment on, this is TCP 2610, the Indiana Avenue Corridor Study. If you are in the room, please come to the podium, sign in. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. If you are online, please raise your hand and you'll be called on by the Zoom keeper. We have a speaker in the chamber. Please state your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
Great. Thanks. My name is Greg Alexander. This is not a good design. A two-way bike lane on one side of the street always has trouble at the endpoints, and this proposed design has 4 endpoints over less than a mile. Good infrastructure directs sidewalks off, or cyclists off of the sidewalk, but this one directs cyclists directly onto the most busy sidewalk. It will cause lawless and dangerous and frightening behavior. The bike lane is proposed as 2 disconnected facilities. I hate tautologies, but a disconnected facility is not a connected network. The transportation plan calls for bike lanes, not bike gaps, so the proposed finding that it complies with the transportation plan is simply false. The intersection of 4th and Indiana in particular is almost unchanged by this design. Pedestrians will still face a multiple threat crossing. 4th and Indiana is the pedestrian crash hotspot on this corridor. It should be the most affected intersection, but instead it is the least affected intersection. Clearly, safety was not the priority of this design. The Safe Streets for All policy says we will prioritize safety over capacity, but the staff report is explicit that stakeholders were allowed to overrule city policy. So it is not true. The proposed finding that it complies with the Safe Streets for All policy is not true. The worst part is the staff memo claims that obtaining stakeholder support will allow the city to move forward with similar projects in the future. Unfortunately, that's not true either. If this design is implemented, bike and ped traffic will not meaningfully improve in the most important parts of this corridor. Businesses will not see increased revenue from foot traffic. Cyclists and pedestrians will not experience greater comfort or convenience or safety. The public will not see tangible improvements to justify the expenses. We need to learn from the failure of the 7 line. Half-assed designs that fail to honor the council's mandate to deprioritize car traffic do not work. They don't improve transportation for vulnerable groups, and they don't generate public support. Good designs do work, but not if we build bad ones. Please vote against this proposal. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there further public comment on TCP 2610? Is there any comments online? I have Paul Rousseau. Okay, please state your name. You'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead. Mr. Rousseau?
Jeez, all right. Took a while to unmute. Paul Rousseau, Bloomington resident. I'm going to skip most of what I was going to say because Mr. Alexander just said it better than I could have. I strongly support everything he just said. I also strongly second the comments and questions by Commissioner Davis. And I have a question, which is that given that IU student enrollment plummets during the summer, has the city asked the university to convert some of their private parking into public parking? That would apply to both the parking lot in question here between 4th and Kirkwood, but as far as Kirkwood opening, there's also a parking lot on the southwest corner of 6th and Indiana that I wonder about. Other than that, I wonder if this plan before us not one of the clearest examples of business interests superseding the public interest. And so many times I wonder, what is this relationship we have between Bloomington and IU? Is it healthy cooperation, or is it codependence? I say all these things as someone who is car-free and gets around by bicycle almost every day of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment in chambers? I don't see anybody getting up to the podium. Online, anybody else? Last call for public comment on TCP 2610. Seeing none, we come back to the commission for second round of questions. Who wants to take a first crack? Mr. Flaherty.
Thank you. So concentrating again on the section from 3rd to Kirkwood, it seems like there's space for 3 things. You could put, for instance, parking, a drive lane, and a protected bike lane, have one of each. You could do 2 of some of them. You could do 2 drive lanes. You could do 2 parking, alleys, parking both sides of the street with 1 drive lane, et cetera. So we can have all 3. This design doesn't. And I'm having a hard time understanding why, I guess. I know IU is the major factor here. I think it was quoted they had like major operational concerns about a one lane, for drivers on the street. But it doesn't seem like the traffic counts justify. Like, I'm trying to understand what they're like. I don't doubt that they have concerns. Obviously, they're exerting their influence for a reason. But I'm trying to understand: are those concerns well founded? Are they backed by data? Are they receptive to the fact that the traffic counts don't really support that, for instance? So could you help me understand better, like what, since IU isn't here, I know I'm asking you instead, but can you help me understand better what the concerns of capital planning and facilities are, like more specifically?
Sure. I will reiterate that I am not IU. I do not want to speak for IU. I will repeat things that I've heard in those meetings as best as I remember them, but again, I am not IU in this situation.
Of course.
Traffic throughput was a concern about future congestion, especially on major event days and weekends, football game days, graduation, et cetera. They had concerns about loading along the area for events at Bryan Hall and Franklin Hall specifically. In current conditions, they normally have a box truck or a couple box trucks take up the east lane on the corridor by one of those 2 buildings, and they unload and load things into those buildings for events. They also had concerns about emergency service access. I will note that the city did work closely with police and fire during this project, and I can talk more about that if you'd like, but that was one of their major concerns. I believe there was more. That is as much as I can remember from the top of my head. Sorry, it's not a perfect answer.
That's helpful. I see Mr. Kanoki getting up to maybe add.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, when we had Indiana down to 1 lane, there were times where it backed up all the way to 3rd. And Hank already mentioned this, but the reason for that is pedestrian traffic is totally unrestricted, so vehicles just have to wait. And when you have 2 lanes, you have more storage for vehicles to wait while all the pedestrians are crossing, and traffic doesn't back up to 3rd, hardly ever. So it was doing that a lot more often. There's some solutions to that, one of which is you could signalize these intersections that are really high pedestrian traffic. We suggested that to IU, and they were very much not in favor of that. So I think it's kind of balancing different preferences here. You could resolve things with some solutions, and like you said, there's a lot of different options for the space. Another thing that I don't think has been mentioned either is you could actually widen the road to get more than 3. Mm-hmm. That would involve street tree removal. I use brick wall or stone wall being moved back, things like that. That's something we didn't even really talk to IU about, but ultimately it could be an option. So,
I guess thank you both. Just to follow up, it feels to me like those concerns are mostly either unfounded, like with respect to like the game day traffic being much worse than regular, for instance, or can be accommodated through design, like having a dedicated, loading zone and bus drop area that I saw in one of the concepts, things like that. I'll also note that the 3rd Street, Indiana south of 3rd Street, as it approaches in the proposed concept, only has 1 lane now northbound instead of 2, which would also maybe limit the sort of, I don't know, influx rate. I guess, can you tell me more, to the extent you're able, about your ability to address the concerns that you had? Because if they are indeed addressable, yeah.
Sure. So I will try to go step by step and talk about the concerns and how we attempted to address them. In terms of traffic flow and throughput as a whole, in one of our previous Concept A iterations, we did incorporate a bus pull-off. So buses would pull off to the side of the street and would not stop traffic. Currently, buses stop 1 lane of traffic, and so Indiana Avenue is de facto a 1 lane anyway. We already talked about curbside management quite a bit, but converting those blocks from 3rd to Kirkwood, specifically 4th to Kirkwood, into a flex zone of some art, whether it's long-term delivery, short-term deliveries, delivery time-specific areas, I don't know, but that is one other area. So we can have deliveries get off the street, buses get off the street, and the motor vehicle lane is truly for motor vehicles. Emergency access. This was actually one of the more exciting parts of the project. Kendall and I worked with fire and police on this and specifically designed this bike lane to accommodate a fire truck, their biggest fire truck. And fire's nearest station is at 4th and Grant, so just about a block west of where this project is, or a block and a half west of where this project is. And their main line to go northbound is east on 4th, north on Indiana. And so we want to make sure that they have the ability, in case there is ever congestion or somebody blocking the lane on Indiana Avenue, to be able to drive through unimpeded to get to wherever they need to get to. And so this design, or a previous iteration of this design, allowed for a fire truck and police car to drive through the bike lane, make it a pseudo emergency access lane to get through town. In terms of loading, specifically, I already mentioned the bus pull-off north of Kirkwood. We made that pull-off, I forget exactly how many feet, but very, very long, to accommodate 2 full buses and a box truck. So it could additionally be used as a BT, I forget the exact term, but the type of area where the drivers take a break and take a 5 or 10 minute break, and they can go use the bathroom, do whatever they need to do. It could be used for that, and it could be used for loading and a bus to just get through as well. I think those are the major ones. Kendall, am I missing anything here? I don't think I am.
So it sounds like you proposed and sort of feel like you're able to mitigate most of the concerns, major areas of concern that IU raised, and shared that with them, but they were ultimately unconvinced. Is that right?
Yes, and now that we're talking about this, one other concern that they had that I haven't mentioned yet is simply the pedestrians crossing Indiana Avenue with two-way bike traffic. Currently, pedestrians only need to look one way for motor vehicles going northbound. In this scenario, then you would have bicycles going both north and southbound, and the potential for bicycle and pedestrian crashes.
Thanks. I'll stop there for now.
Who else has questions? Mr. Binder.
I don't want to dwell too much on the gap in the protected bike lane from 3rd to Kirkwood, because I think there's been a lot of comments already about this. So I will actually just ask a couple of other questions related to signalization. One is, because you mentioned it, what I use, sorry? Go ahead. Okay, one was I use resistance to the idea of signalizing any of these intersections. I'd be curious to hear more about that, what their justifications were. And then secondly, specifically about Indiana and 7th, you just mentioned that with bicycle traffic traveling multiple directions, there's more, potential points of conflict and more, more to have to pay attention to. So I guess my question would be, how much thought there was or consideration there was to specifically signalizing Indiana Avenue and 7th, just because that's the intersection of two-way bike lanes plus two-way bike traffic, or two-way motor traffic on 7th Street and northbound motor traffic on Indiana Avenue with a lot of turning directions from Indiana onto 7th. So that's just a lot to pay attention to. It's like a four-way stop. Well, I mean, the signalization, I think, is my question there. How much consideration was made to that specific intersection?
So to answer your first question, what was IU's concern with signalization at Kirkwood in Indiana? It was aesthetics. This is a very photogenic location for them. I think for all of us, it's the heart of our community, so that was their concern. But signalization would resolve some of the issues with traffic backup. So when we saw Indiana down to one lane, we saw it back up to third. The reason was unrestricted pedestrian flow. So that is an option that would resolve that issue. To answer your question about 7th in Indiana, I neglected to mention that, but yes, we have definitely been considering a signal at 7th in Indiana. We actually had our traffic signal consultant look at that a little bit, and it's definitely something we'd pursue moving forward. It does also operate as an all-way stop, but like you said, could benefit from signalization from a safety standpoint.
Okay, thanks. I think that's basically all I've got.
Mr. Strasburg.
Yes, my question is about contingency plans. I share the viewpoint of other transportation cyclists on this commission and in the public that have concerns about the gap in this network. I believe it will induce the sidewalk riding and could create new dangers conflicts between cyclists and pedestrians. So working with IU, I imagine some of your staff might have brought up this potential. Is there a contingency plan if we try this out and we have this new kinds of conflict? Where do you go from here if the gap doesn't work out?
Yeah, sure. So one idea that we've had with this project for a long time is to try it out with temporary materials first. The concept shown is in permanent materials, bricks, pavers, that hasn't been decided yet, but some kind of concrete material. We could also do this with temporary materials. And so if we do it with quick build materials, say similar to what we have on East 3rd Street or other temporary bike lanes in the temporary protected bike lanes in the city, we could try it out, evaluate it, have learning lessons, and change it as needed.
Does that answer your question? Further questions to my left? Going online, Ms. Davis? None? All right, let me ask a couple. Let me get this straight. In the suggested alternate bike route, it would go, a southbound bicyclist on Indiana would turn at Kirkwood, turn westbound, go 1 block over to Dunn, and then they'd go to 4th, through the light at 3rd, and down what becomes Atwater all the way to Atwater and Henderson before turning right onto the existing. Is that how it would go?
That is one option. Honestly, I would imagine that most folks who currently use Dunn to go southbound would continue to use Dunn Street going southbound.
You mean they'd turn right off onto that exit, that Dunn Street exit?
Yes. So they would go Dunn Street through 4th, through 3rd, and then that split off onto, but I think between where it turns into Atwater and Dunn, they would turn on to Dunn there, head to Smith, then Henderson.
I'm a frequent user of this area, and I have gone against traffic, ridden on the sidewalk on Henderson as it becomes from Indiana, going south from 3rd Street, just to get to that wonderful bike lane, the two-way lane that's the seed of this concept. And I can't believe that anybody would go all the way I mean, Dunn Street at 2nd is not the safest thing either. So I'm a little, I mean, is there any design mock-up of this alternate route? Because the only one that makes sense to me is what I described as going around the curve to meet up with the existing infrastructure at Anderson and Atwater.
Sure. So the alternative route would simply be a cyclist taking the lane or using the existing sharrows to get to where they need to go.
So no infrastructure would be sharrows on that.
The other option would be go southbound on Grant across the newly built pedestrian bike refuge through that intersection over to Smith, up to Henderson, then along the multi-use path, then controversial bike.
That answers that question. Thank you. You expressed some concerns expressed by the public about, later in the process, about potential traffic congestion being a concern, but they seem absurd since the initial survey found that traffic congestion was one of the lowest concerns. Why would staff be suddenly more concerned about the potential for traffic congestion once these designs were presented when it wasn't such a big deal at the outset?
Sure. I don't know if the public concern for traffic congestion was the main impetus in creating this two-lane design through third to seventh. That was more of the impetus of stakeholders talked to, like IU and local businesses.
Okay. Last question I'll ask is, can you explain a little bit more about the conflict points that have been mentioned tonight? And also, are there any regrets you have about the design of the 7 line that would be reflected in a newer design here with a north-south bike lane?
Sure. Good questions. So your first question was about conflict points, correct?
Yes.
And concerns we have or questions we have about them?
Well, just that in this alternative design where there's not a clear bike lane between 3rd and Kirkwood, it creates more conflict points. Is that correct?
Yes, because you have 2 more termini of the bike infrastructure. Okay. So in the original concept day, you had the southbound terminus at Smith and Henderson or 2nd and Henderson, wherever you want to define that terminus, and the northern terminus at Indiana and 10th. Whenever we are creating new protected bike infrastructure, especially two-way bike infrastructure that is not connected to other bike infrastructure, you have conflict points. And because the city's bike infrastructure is not fully built out yet, we are still in that mode of creating the puzzle pieces and not necessarily connecting the puzzle pieces. Now, there is a new connection between the 7 line and Indian Avenue that is connecting the puzzle pieces. So we are starting to get to that phase, which is exciting, but as you can see at the south and the north end of this project, we're not there yet. To your question specifically about this design and the 3rd and Kirkwood termini. So for northbound cyclists traveling along Henderson through 3rd to Indiana, honestly, it's a pretty smooth transition. You are going from a protected bicycle lane into a shared lane, but that shared lane begins with a protected intersection, so there is not going to be a car immediately in that lane. So northbound cyclists honestly have it pretty nicely in this design.
Okay.
Southbound cyclists, again, if you are traveling on Indiana to Kirkwood, we talked about the detour route for that already.
Right.
For southbound cyclists at the northern end of the project, say on Indian Avenue north of 10th, those are still questions we have. Actually, Kendall and I were talking today about a potential alteration in how that's designed. And so we are still figuring that out, but we are looking at other cities in terms of how they begin and end to a protected bike lanes where there is no bike infrastructure after that. Again, as it's shown, southbound cyclists, they are already taking the lane. They would merge into a little protected island in the middle of the street, cross into the protected bike lane when clear, and travel on the east side of the street throughout the entirety of the project.
Thank you. Interesting answers throughout. Are there any last gasp questions, Mr. Flade, before we go to comment?
Last question. Thank you. It's about the double threat risk that Mr. Alexander brought up. So when you have two lanes of vehicles heading the same direction, you're all familiar, but a pedestrian starts to cross, maybe one car stops, another one doesn't, maybe the second car doesn't have a sight line to that pedestrian. So, you know, obviously the overall goal of this project is to help achieve our Vision Zero goals, you know, eliminate serious injuries and fatalities. It seems like that's a real risk that we're not mitigating at a couple of key intersections, but could be mitigating. And I guess I'm curious for your thoughts about that and the double threat risk specifically. And then also, maybe if you could speak at all, and this could be responsive or just broader, to like the types of crashes we've seen. I was just reviewing the Safe Streets for All action plan again. In this context, it seems like pedestrian crashes specifically are the major issue along this corridor and most significant kind of in that 3rd to 6th range. So as far as the types of crashes that have occurred and the injuries that have occurred, are they from that particular threat and that risk? Yeah, more on that, please.
Sure. So your first question was about the general concept of a double threat risk and how it applies to this project, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that, going back to the existing traffic and pedestrian counts in this area, pedestrians in peak hours outnumber vehicles 3 to 1, right? And so in any project, we want to make sure that we are prioritizing pedestrians. We have talked so much about the bike infrastructure tonight. At the end of the day, we need to make our streets more walkable. There are more pedestrians than anybody else out here in this area of the city, and this project specifically should prioritize pedestrians. And that's why in previous iterations, we did include that road diet of going from 2 lanes to 1 lane. That road diet was not to add bike infrastructure. That road diet was to reduce the number of lanes that pedestrians have to cross. From there, then we asked ourselves, what could we put in this space? Could it be parking? Could it be trees? Could it be something else? It could be anything, and then looking at the other priorities that our transportation plan have given us, that the public gave us in that first round of public outreach, that's how we landed on the two-way protected bike lane. And so I do want to make it clear that the initial idea of a road diet was for pedestrians, not to add a bike lane specifically. Regarding that double threat that you talked about, that is why we did the road diet. Because we have so many pedestrians, because we know that when pedestrians cross 1 lane versus 2, it is safer. Now, again, as we've talked about throughout the presentation and Q&A tonight, there are other major stakeholders in town that have other goals, other needs that we need to be aware of. And so this ended up being a project where we know it is not perfect, but it is good. It is better than the existing conditions, and we don't want to let good be the enemy of perfect or perfect be the enemy of good, you know? And so while in this current iteration there are still 2 lanes, I hear your point, and this is a topic that we could raise for a future project down the line. You had another question for me, but I forget what it was. I don't know if I already
It was basically about whether the actual crash data itself tuned some of these recommendations, and if sorry, that's my duck alarm. It's pretty fun. Basically, if the pedestrian crashes that are happening are caused by that type of thing, it seems even more important to eliminate that particular type of threat given the traffic counts, given the overall context we shared. So if there's more to share on that front about the specific types of crashes that have occurred and what the data informs, great. If not, beyond what you've already said, no worries.
Quite frankly, I don't remember the specific types of crashes regarding the double threat that you're talking about. In terms of crash data as a whole, the reason that we're working on a corridor project and not intersection-specific projects is because there are a variety of crash types at a variety of intersections throughout the corridor. So when you go into the actual crash types and who they affected, they have affected everyone. There have been motor vehicle only crashes, motor vehicle and pedestrian crashes, motor vehicle and bicycle crashes. So there have been a number of them at every intersection, and focusing on a specific type of crash, I think sometimes keeps us looking backward and not looking forward at the overall principles of street safety and the overall future risks of what could happen in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any last questions from members before we go to discussion? Mr. Kopic.
Hank, in all these concepts that you did, was there ever one where you provided loading, unloading space on the IU side of the road and maybe the one-way concept?
So in the concept, when you talk about loading and unloading, do you mean for IU specifically or for businesses and third parties?
Well, on the east side for IU only, so that would eliminate some of their concerns.
Yes, so in a previous iteration of this one-lane concept A, we created that long bus pull-off that while it is for buses, it is also long enough for, and this one isn't the exact concept, but you can see the idea here, that it is long enough for IU box trucks and IU loading to happen unimpeded.
Okay, last question, Mr. Strasburg.
Yep. So Bloomington passed a new code that legalizes bicycles to ride on sidewalks with some carve-outs and some geographic exceptions. Is this gap in the network, is that legal for cyclists to ride on the sidewalk there?
Sorry, were you asking if this specific sidewalk on Indian Avenue
Yes.
is legal? Honestly, I'm not sure. I would have to look that up. I know that there is a square around the downtown that is a dismount zone, but I forget if Indian Avenue is specifically included in that.
Yeah.
I have one last question. Well, it's a two-parter. Number one is, approximately how long would you say staff has been in discussion with representatives of IU on the design of this project?
So the public outreach or community outreach phase of this project began in spring of 2024. And I believe our first meeting with IU was maybe that June, I would say. And again, at that point, this was a general concept of we are looking at safety improvements along this corridor. Let's work with each other. From there, especially late 2024 and 2025 was the heart of those discussions. And they've spanned through early this year.
And how many discussions would you say that IU was invited to in that span? 1, 5, more?
Specifically with city staff or public meetings?
How many opportunities did they have to express their concerns?
I think in total we had about maybe 5 to 7 meetings together, give or
Okay.
take.
In that time, did anybody at IU express our concern with Vision Zero?
No.
So would you characterize their concerns as mostly logistical and aesthetic? Or was there any other safety concern that they had?
So they talked about, they understand that there is a Vision Zero goal for the city and they want to be supportive of that. I think where city staff and IU staff have differed in opinion in the past is the way to get to Vision Zero. Now, on this specific project, one key concern that they had was pedestrian crossing, specifically at Kirkwood and 4th, where even though there is an all-way stop sign, their mindset is that a raised intersection would help safety at those locations. And so we've included those in this concept. So there has been productive work between the two entities in this project and how we can improve safety, if that answers your question.
It does, thank you. Okay, unless Ms. Davis chimes in to say she has another question, we should go now to discussion. Before we discuss the case, let me just, yes. Mr. Roebling.
To Mr. Strasburg's question, I was too slow. Indiana Avenue is a dismount zone from 4th through 7th.
Indiana Avenue is a dismount zone from 4th through 7th?
Correct.
Who asked the question?
I did. I asked if sidewalk riding was legal during that, in that gap.
Okay, well, let's just review what our options are here. The bylaws of this commission say that on petitions, motions shall be to A, approve as presented, B, approve with refinement considerations, C, refer the matter back to staff for further refinement considerations, or D, continue the petition to a future meeting. Note that we do not have the option to reject the finding, so I would suppose that perhaps continuing the petition is the closest thing to a rejection, should somebody want to recommend that. But we must make a recommendation tonight of one of those choices, and with that, I invite members to discuss this case. Mr. Flaherty.
Can you distinguish between the second and third options again, the refinement?
I think it's that we want to recommend an amendment, but we don't need it to come back to us, whereas C is we want to see refinements and we want input in them before we vote. So that's my assumption as to what that should mean. Mr. Binder?
Yeah, just another point of order. I guess my question would be more about the difference, the quantitative difference between C and D, because would D simply be, oh, this seems interesting, but we just need more time to talk about it? We don't necessarily need to see further changes proposed by staff? Is that the idea behind D?
I'm going to suggest the idea that the idea of continuing the petition is that we have enough dissatisfaction with the proposal that we think it needs more than just a few refinements, that it needs a rethinking. Now, I welcome the input of staff, especially Mr. Roebling, who authored the primary text of these bylaws. Do I have this interpretation correct?
I would say no, that I think D would be to not ask staff to do anything with it. You just need more time. You weren't satisfied with the timing of the vote. You wanted more members to be present, something like that. Whereas C would be asking something specific. The idea was that you would identify the exact changes, or as close as you can, that you would like to see staff come back with in a future meeting.
Well, I'll note that for our options when we're considering resolutions, that we can approve or reject. In one case, we can do positive or negative recommendations. We don't have that option here. How would you suggest, if there's a majority that finds this proposal dissatisfactory, what are we to do?
It's a great question. So the body doesn't have the ability to permanently stall anything. The decision of all transportation infrastructure projects lies solely in the city engineer's hands. So you can only approve or ask for considerations, or you can modify the recommendation or recommended findings. You can adopt your own findings that dissuade the adoption of whatever we're proposing.
Why do we agree to these bylaws again? This doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, Mr. Roebling. We should be able to say we don't like the project.
Yeah, I think you absolutely can do that. So you just can't stop a project. That is the city engineer's job. But you can, you don't have to support the project. Similar to a negative recommendation where you can modify the language of the findings and you can find negative findings. I would say that is different than the word approval we might want to look at in a future meeting, but I
Yes, we
understand your
would.
point.
Yes. Okay, well, I hope that has clarified for everyone the choices that we have. And with that, I invite discussion of case TCP 2610. Who wants to start? Ms. Davis? Anybody to my right? Mr. Flaherty?
Sure. I would be in favor of option C, which is moving that we would refer the petition back to staff for refinements prior to it coming back to us. And I do have a motion prepared to that end that I would be happy to make at some point. I will say I don't agree with the staff proposed findings. Is it consistent with the comprehensive plan and other applicable adopted city plans? I would say no. It doesn't meet the transportation plan for a PBL on this corridor, for instance. Is it consistent with best practices for eliminating all transportation-related fatalities and serious injuries? I would again say no, because there's clear steps that we could take that were proposed previously and then abandoned largely because of a single stakeholder, IU? Is it consistent with advancing sustainable transportation and equitable access to all facility users while prioritizing non-automotive modes? I think, again, the idea that we've got space for three things and we're deprioritizing the non-automotive modes to give double priority to the automotive mode for several blocks is, again, this proposal is not consistent with the criteria for approving plans. And then, has it adequately conducted public engagement and considered community-centric designs tied to targeted outcomes? Again, I think the kind of setting aside of what was the clear community priorities in favor of the priorities of Indiana University it means that we would need different findings. If we're going to vote on findings for this concept, we would need, I believe, to make findings that it doesn't meet any of the criteria that are our codified criteria for review. And I won't dwell, just to be clear, I'm dissatisfied with the design. I'm not upset with staff. I understand there are competing concerns here, and you're balancing the things you have to balance, and that sometimes these decisions are made by folks other than those in this room as well. But I am really concerned about this pattern of behavior from Indiana University. Previously it was Tom Morrison was the VP of Capital Planning and Facilities, and Adam Teese, who worked under him. They're both no longer at IU, but folks who've been working on this stuff for a while, including our staff, know very well that we delayed implementation of those safety improvements on 3rd Street for like 7 or 8 years because Capital Planning and Facilities called the mayor's office under Mayor Hamilton and said, we don't like it. I met with Adam Teese about it when I was a graduate student, and he told me it was because it was ugly, that they didn't like the aesthetics of temporary materials, interim materials, and that they couldn't support it for that reason. I don't know if that's a factor here or not, but I'm sharing that anecdote because we've let it stop us from living our own values, and we've increased ambition since that time. We've actually set a Vision Zero target. If we're going to have any chance of achieving it, we actually have to be able to stand up for the values that we espouse, the policies that we adopt. And I think what's been very clear from staff's presentation is that we can reasonably accommodate almost everything that Indiana University is concerned about, and that their concerns ultimately are not things that should trump safety. We shouldn't get to say, well, we want a bigger loading zone, so we are going to make a less safe road. Like, those two things are not equivalent interests. So I'm hopeful that the commission will be supportive of referring this back to staff for refinements that to bring a concept to us that is more consistent with the criteria under which we're meant to evaluate projects, specifically that it would meet them. And that's what I would like to propose, but I'm curious to hear others' thoughts as well.
Thank you, Mr. Flaherty. Who else would like to chime in here? Mr. Strasburg?
Yes. It was highlighted that pedestrian safety is a priority in this area, and that is great. From my own crash analysis, that sounds on point. But this gap for southbound cyclists will increase pedestrian risk from sidewalk riding. It was a concern for me that staff wasn't ready with the answer of whether sidewalk riding was legal here, because there might be not just a likely conflict, but a legal conflict between cyclists. You did clarify that it's not all that case. The things I would be comfortable with, besides just sending it back, is narrowing the scope to say it seems maybe otherwise good, but for this section. Or I think there needs to be some kind of contingency plan if there really is a conflict between the southbound cyclists and pedestrians there. One could be build it like it is and then have a plan for what if you need to adjust it after that. Or I would be comfortable approving it with temporary materials so that, to me, though, these are some options to move something forward to improve safety some sooner, but we need to, I think, anticipate that this gap may be a problem that needs to be significantly addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. To my left, Mr. Kopic. Ms. Davis, any thoughts? No? Mr. Binder.
Yeah, just a couple. I actually want to commend staff for their work on this project so far. I think there were a lot of difficult problems that, were pretty apparent at the outset of this. And I'll just actually cite one example, the crossover of the protected bike lane, between Atwater and Third, and its interaction with the, South Henderson Street protected path on the west side of the street. That was not an easy design to kind of work through and iterate on. So I think that, I'm confident that we can eventually get to a good solution for this project, because I think that staff have already demonstrated that they want to do a good job with this project and have the capability to do so. But I do want to call out that I don't think that this is presently designed I can support. I think Councilmember Flaherty already outlined, just about all of the same concerns that I have about it, the design, and not just the design, but the sort of engagement process, some of the parts of the planning process, and the degree to which IUs demonstrate, kind of a certain level of influence on this project, as well they should. It's obviously adjacent to campus, and they should have a say in this project, but. I just get the sense that I think at the moment we're sort of being held to certain, whims that IU capital planning have, not just about this project, but others, in the past, Third Street and so forth. So, yeah, option C for, sending this back to staff for further refinement is also probably a motion that I would support. There are many things that I do like about this project. I think it's moving in the proper direction, but I also think it would be a shame if it were built as depicted currently, because of the various shortcomings, namely the gap in the protected bike lane between Third and Kirkwood. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that. So again, thank you to planning staff for your work on this so far. I look forward to seeing new versions of it in the future. Thanks.
Well, a few things. First, we're in debate now, Mr. Seaboard. Is there something that you...
I was just going to say that I appreciate this discussion, and just read it. If the motion or the direction is to send it back to staff for further refinements, just making the request that some of this dialogue is really helpful to understand, like, what specifically you're asking for, or if certain parts of the project are generally favorable. If there are, the more specific you can be, that would be helpful to staff to hear if there are options. I just wanted to share that.
It's a valuable point of order that I was about to bring up, and I appreciate you clarifying it. It's a good point, and I'm going to get to it. But first, I want to say, just to throw out a fact, the 2 blocks of Indiana between Third and Kirkwood are, I happen to know because I have stuck my hands elbow deep into parking data, the most in-demand parking spots in the city, without question. The price on those blocks should double. If they doubled tomorrow, they would still be in excess of 88% usage. So from a commercial perspective alone, I would not favor any change that removes that parking. Changing it to flex space or what have you is significant, but one of our charges is to consider the commercial viability of transportation infrastructure. So I did appreciate the consideration of it. On the other hand, I do, as people have heard me say tonight, have an objection to businesses thinking that they can and should be able to deliver anytime they want. About the only entity in this corridor that I would defer to on that note is, ironically, IU, because they are more of a 24/7 operation, shall we say. That's as far as I'm going to go when it comes to complimenting IU here, but I do want to point out that I think we should be rethinking allowing deliveries any hour of the day, and that we should be requiring businesses to be thinking the same way about deliveries that we thought when implementing meters, is that, no, you can't just have deliveries done anytime you want. We need to schedule it. But that's not a matter for this design. IU did not consult us when they closed 7th Street to bus traffic, when they closed 7th Street to all traffic. They put a statue of Hoagie Carmichael there 20 years ago, said, like it or lump it. 20 years before that, they didn't ask anybody when they decided to plop a couple of gates down at the corner of Kirkwood and Indiana. If you look at the history of IU, you'll see that there were plenty of opportunities to turn right going westbound on 3rd Street to turn into the campus. IU has effectively created a super block between 3rd and 10th, between Indiana and what is now Eagleson. They didn't ask anybody's permission. They're the state and they do what they want. And here now, ironically, they're throwing their weight around again. It's ironic that they can make those changes whenever they feel like, but then when we want to make a change that we think we see fit, IU says no. But they don't check with us. They're not the greatest neighbors. Let's just be blunt about it. And in fact, that they don't feel that they need to be here says volumes. So I feel for city staff that has to endure it. But just the fact that city staff met with IU 5 to 7 times on this project. Is this commission going to have meaningfully more than one opportunity to consider it? Maybe we'll get one more, but we weren't at that table. We weren't there to uphold the goals of the city along with them to represent the public interest. But we should have enough opportunity to also refine this proposal until it's appropriate. But in the end, it's going to be a matter of who has the most clout. I do agree with the idea that we should refine it, but we should refine it, simply put, to go to Mr. Sieber's point about what next. We should refine it to the original proposal where there's a continuous bike lane. That's what I'm going to recommend. I don't know exactly how to make that recommendation. That's what I would like to direct staff to do, is simply revert to that design, and then let's send that design to City Council and see what happens. I don't know what else to do. The best thing I can say is make a dedicated, if you're going to really force bike traffic onto Dunn, make a dedicated bike lane from Kirkwood all the way to Henderson, down Atwater. There is an awful lot of space on that speedway of a road that turns into Atwater. It's never been necessary. It wouldn't impede traffic. It would only keep traffic going the speed that it should be going instead of revving up to go 35 miles an hour on Atwater. It wouldn't hurt to put a protected bike lane there, and it would make sense to connect it with Atwater and Henderson. But that's not what we should be preferring. What we should be preferring is that 3rd through 5th be bike lanes as well on Indiana. The last thing I'll say is it was staff's idea to eliminate 3 commissions to create this one, and in so doing, limited the public's ability to oversee in this way that we find ourselves now, that we don't have the way to meaningfully reject a proposal like we can, a petition like we can other types of items that come before us. It is a problem with our bylaws that we need to revisit. I'm glad Mr. Roebling thinks that we need to revisit it. I want to point out that city code says that this body has the ability to set its own bylaws. So I would like some meaningful dialogue with staff about a way that this body can more effectively object to a proposal that it finds unsatisfactory. Right now, in our bylaws, again, initially written by staff, the point has been made. We can't meaningfully delay, let alone reject a project. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that we should be able to make a negative recommendation just as we can on a resolution in our bylaws. Is there any follow-up commentary before we go to a vote? And also, is there a member who would like to, I'd like to say that if a member is going to propose to refer the matter back to staff for further refinement, to be specific about what refinement they would like to see. Anyone? Is there a proposal, a motion?
I
Mr.
can make a
Flaherty.
motion. I can send this in writing to staff. I move that we refer the petition back to staff prior to its return to the commission for further refinements of the design concept, especially between 3rd Street and 6th Street, to better align the proposal with the commission's criteria and findings for transportation projects, and especially regarding alignment with the transportation plan's call for protected bike lanes along Indiana Avenue, the removal of double threat for pedestrian crossings of Indiana Avenue, and consistency with community feedback.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
A second from Mr. Binder. Is there any discussion of the motion? I'll go to Ms. Davis, since she hasn't been called on.
I support Mr. Flaherty's motion.
Okay. We're not calling for a vote yet. I just wanted to know if you had any comments on it. Any comments on the motion? To my left? To my right? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote on the motion to refer the matter back to staff according to the criteria Mr. Flaherty laid out. Will the staff please call the roll?
Binder? Yes. Fallon?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Strasburg?
Yes.
And Kopic?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you to everyone for the presentation. We now go to TCR 2611, Title 15 amendments, Atlas on 17th, amending Title 15 to codify proposed changes to stop control, speed, no parking, and bus zones. Who is here to present this item?
That'll be me.
And could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is John Garzi from the Engineering Department. All right, so this item is for the Atlas on 17th subdivision, accepted into the city's street maintenance inventory by the Board of Public Works in March 2025. Stop signs and 20-mile-per-hour signs were installed at the time, but not formally added to Title 15. Since then, we've heard concerns from parking services, police, and Bloomington Transit about illegal parking, traffic flow, and access for larger vehicles. Staff completed a field review and coordinated with Bloomington Transit. We're proposing to codify the existing controls, add targeted no parking restrictions, and designate a bus layover to support safe, reliable operations. If you'd like me to go into detail about the specific proposals, then I can point out them. Let's see. In terms of no parking, we're proposing to have no parking on Breckenridge, which is north of Telluride. Our concerns there is that it's too narrow of a street for people to be able to pass if people are parking on both sides of the streets. And so we're proposing to eliminate parking on the east sides, as there are driveways on those sides, and so it's easier for us to remove parking there, just to allow for better visibility. We're also removing parking at Redland, just west of Telluride, and that's also to provide abilities for vehicles to drive on the street and to make turns. Same thing at Telluride, in the middle of the block, as well as Aurora. And this is to provide a space for buses to stop and do their layover. Right now, buses are stopping in the middle of the road on Telluride, just east of the curve. And this will provide the buses place for them to stop for about 15 minutes as the operators need to go and use the restroom or wait for their route to start again. And the same thing is happening at Aurora. We're removing parking for about 50 feet. so that the bus can come southbound and make a left turn. That hatched area that you can see is intended to prevent people from parking there, but just to clarify it, we're going to add yellow curb and a no parking sign there. In terms of 20-mile-per-hour signs, we're going to be doing that for the entire length of Telluride, Redland, Arvada, Aurora, and Englewood. So most of the entire neighborhood. We're also adding in some stop signs on Breckenridge as it approaches Telluride, Redland as well as it approaches Telluride, and Arvada as it approaches Redland, as well as Telluride as it approaches Aurora, and Englewood and Arlington Park as it approaches 17th Street. So basically all the minor streets as they approach a major street.
If you're done presenting, just say thank you and let us know
Okay,
that we
thank you.
can take questions.
Okay, if there are any questions, I'll take them.
All right, thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions for staff on PCP 2611? To my left? To my right? Online? With that, well, I guess we'll go to the public. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak on TCP 2611, please come to the podium, state your name, you'll have 3 minutes. If you are online, please use the raise hand function in Zoom, and you'll be called on. Is there anyone who would like to comment on TCP 2611? Mr. Roebling, is there anybody online?
Just
Okay.
a small clarification, TCR in this case, because it involves.
I'm sorry, it's a resolution?
Yeah, it's a resolution.
I'm sorry,
I
TCR.
apologize.
It's hard to go back and forth to make sure I've got the right number here. This is a resolution, so just as a reminder, while we're coming back to members, this is a resolution to be forwarded to the Common Council. We can make a positive recommendation, negative recommendation, no recommendation, or continue to a future meeting. With that, I'll come back for a second round of questions or comment or a motion.
I have a motion. I move to adopt the proposed findings and forward the resolution to City Council with a positive recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, will staff please call the roll on the motion to recommend with a positive recommendation to forward with a positive recommendation to the Common Council, TCR 2611.
Volin? No?
Volin.
Volin?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yes, yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Strasburg?
Yes.
Kopic?
Yes.
Binder?
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0. Thank you to staff for that. We now move to the next item on our agenda, which is discussion of items not on the docket, including staff proposals or general public comment. This has been compressed a little bit. But anyway, are there any items that members would like to bring up for discussion that are not on the docket? To my left? To my right? Mr. Flaherty.
Just a very brief follow-up on the council's deliberation session, which I had mentioned previously about accessibility and snow removal. I think we agreed Mr. Strasburg is going to join that session. It was delayed by a month to May 13th based on some other business the council had. If any commissioners have specific questions or issues they want to make sure that we take a look at in that deliberation session, please just let me know within the next week. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Any other items for discussion? Ms. Davis? Okay. I would like to discuss bylaws at some point to see if we can do something about recommendations for petitions. I also am concerned about this body's obligation to develop an annual report. In the wake of the parking study, regardless of how it's corrected, this body's responsible, at least for overseeing the production of a report. And it is now April. We're almost through our first year. How does staff want to handle that obligation that we have?
Great question. We'll have to get together engineering, public works, planning and transportation, and ESD in order to start that up. We were hoping that they would finish up this parking study and then we could jump into the annual report. And so now that we're crossing the finish line, the plan is to pivot to that. So
The plan was to what?
Pivot to that. And
Okay.
so we'll aim in that direction shortly. Once everything's all wrapped up there, that's the new plan.
Okay. Does staff have a sense of what month of the year the report would be most appropriate to be issued, or does it not matter, do you think?
It doesn't matter as far as staff is concerned. We're happy to discuss it with the commission if you all have a certain month you're aiming for, but.
Good. Thank you. Any general public comment from members of the public who have not spoken, speaking on an item that's not on the agenda tonight? If so, please raise your hand in Zoom or come to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on an item that was not on tonight's docket?
I have Paul Rousseau online, and they should be able to unmute here in just a second.
All right. Please state your name. You'll have 3 minutes. Mr. Rousseau?
Okay, took a while to let me unmute. Thank you. I've not been able to attend a meeting of yours since last summer. Mondays are usually a problem for me, so I have a backlog of small items. I'll try to run through just 4 of them. I would like to see the 180-day notices on 7th Street ended. I think we're on 3 or 4 by now. I don't think that's what it was intended for. I think one of the commissioners actually said that, words to that effect this evening. Second item is that I've noticed that the Grant Street parking is no longer in compliance with the city code due to some construction, and then I would be glad to send you a proposed ordinance change to clarify. Right now, they're just south of 10th Street, there's parking on both sides of the street, and that makes a great hazard for bicyclists. And I'm proposing to simplify it. So I would be glad to send that to Commissioner Flaherty, for example, since I have his email address and you could consider it at your next meeting. I don't know what the procedure is. Third item is that the speed limit on North Washington Street, south of 10th Street, is incorrectly posted. There should be no variance from the default of 25 miles an hour, but there's a 30 mile per hour sign posted just south of 10th that needs to be removed. And the last thing is that I strongly second Commissioner Volan's idea to revisit bylaws. It does appear that bylaws that you basically inherited need to be revisited. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rousseau. Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak? Please raise your hand in Zoom or come to the podium, and you'll have 3 minutes. This is general public comment on items not on the docket. I would like to say that generally speaking, if you would like to contact the Transportation Commission, the email address I believe is transportation.commission@bloomington.in.gov. So please feel free, Mr. Rousseau and anybody else who has comments, to send email to that. It will get to every member of the commission that way. Is that correct?
That is correct. It automatically forwards to 4 different people at least. All of the staff liaisons.
Okay, does it forward to the commissioners?
No, it does not automatically forward to commissioners.
Okay, how do we get, if we want to hear Mr. Rousseau's comments, how do we get his email, short of us giving our own email out?
Sure thing. So Typically, there's a form for general public comment on the website as well, and the expectation is that once a month before every meeting, staff liaisons are checking that to make sure that as people are making those comments, they are included as part of the packet. Last I checked, there wasn't anything new, so nothing was added to this particular packet, but then I create accessible documents from those comments that come in vis-a-vis Google form, and that is how you're sort of set up to receive public comments that way. Sometimes they are not related to topics on the docket, but that's much more rare. They generally are for topics on the docket, so we're helping arrange that feedback as it comes in.
Thank you for that explanation. Although I think it would be nice if we could be emailed directly without us having to give our home emails out. So I think it'd be nice if staff were to come up with a method for people being able to email us directly as well as using the public comment form.
Yeah.
That may be possible.
Thank you.
That may also involve a quick conversation with ITS.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. Is there any other last minute comment before we adjourn? Mr. Rutling.
Yeah, staff has some updates from previous agenda items, which are transportation inquiries. There have been 4 so far. We have one no parking question or inquiry related to Matlock Heights. We expect to see that in May. And then we have inquiries related to College Mall and Covenanter and Smith and Morningside. We are still looking into those, so we don't expect them to necessarily be at May, but they could potentially see some a petition or resolution in May. And then we had an inquiry related to enforcement policy that came along with the College Mall Covenanter inquiry, and we are still looking into that. I expect that on a longer timeline, but we are working on it.
Thank you for that update. I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. Our next meeting is what day? It is May 18th?
May 18th. It is a weird one because there are funny holidays.
Oh, the 25th is Memorial Day. Okay. So we will see everyone, I'm glad I asked, May 18th at 5:30 in this room.
Yes.
With that, this meeting is adjourned.